No?
No, just
Okay.
prepping.
So, I mean, 3 weeks ago, I was doing that, and then I got the call one day that said they wanted to meet with me about being the interim superintendent. So as you can imagine, I was kind of blown away because I was doing the same thing every other principal was doing, which is I wonder who it's going to be and supporting this one and not that one. And so I was very shocked and blown away, and I said, I mean, flattered in a way, but obviously laid up at night for 3 consecutive nights and was like, do I really want this? Like, good grief, what am I signing on to here with this train wreck that we have right now, which it's worse than I even thought. And so, you know, I interviewed and I thought it went very well. And I found that what the board wants, and to the board members' credit, they want something very different. They want different. And they passed over a lot of people to go get to me, which I think upset a lot of people. But I think the reason I was chosen is because they want different. They want different culture and climates in schools. They want different things to happen. And so I think that is what I represent. So I hope I bring that to the table. I mean, obviously there's a lot of pressure to it when I've been told several times you're the savior of JCPS, and I'm like,
No pressure.
I'm just this principal guy. So, but in the end, you know, what I thought is, all right, can I do the, you know, the board is so divided politically, in all honesty. There's a lot of politics involved, which I've found that, as our country is very divided politically, reflects in education decisions. And so I found that, you know, it's going to be difficult for 6 or 9 months, whatever the term ends up being, you know, to keep the support when difficult decisions have to be made of everyone in order to make this happen. But in the end, what I felt was, what's the worst thing that's going to happen is help schools, and I told a group of principals today, I'm going to help you and support you. Now, I'm going to hold you accountable for school culture and climate, because that's what we have to be better at, is culture. And I'm not going to hide behind everything's okay, don't look over here. You know, I'm going to make it very clear we need improvement in culture and climate, and not just our schools that are priority, not just our Southwest schools or our West End schools, but our schools that, many of our East End schools have 2 separate schools in them right now. And that is affecting culture and climate, and I know that. And so I'm going to be very upfront. That's going to be job number 1. And so if that's all I do in 6 or 9 months, give more support to principals, but also ensure that they're constantly working on culture and climate, I'm going to do that. And so what's the worst that happens to me? 9 months from now, I go back to St. Andrews Church Road and go back to being a principal, which isn't a bad thing either. In the meantime, as we kind of start, and I don't want to make this too official, I want you guys to kind of tell me your feelings and thoughts. In the meantime, what I want to do is open up avenues of discussion and talk. And so I think what we can do is have this meeting at least quarterly, where we say, or every other month or something of that nature, where we do this and sit down and talk about issues that you all think are prevalent, and things that are on your mind and how I can help. And always it won't be the answer you want. I tell faculty that what I tell them is, you know, tell me what went well for this year, what didn't go well, how can I support you better, any other issues you want to bring up. Now, you know, I can't always give you what you want, but I think a big part of it is listening and hearing. And sometimes it's just teachers, you know what, I really need one of those whiteboards in my room. And I'm like, really, you don't have a white? That's all? Yeah, all right, we'll get that up tomorrow. I mean, so I mean, those are things that usually you find out that's all a teacher really needs sometimes, is a whiteboard, you know. And so,
Or someone to listen.
but I mean, 75 teachers took the better part of 3.5 weeks, especially while all this was going down with me in the background. But I mean, I believe that, like, we have to have the opportunity to speak and to talk and hear you out. And if in the end I might have to say, well, I got to make a tough decision here, and it might not be what you want, but at least we've had the opportunity to talk, and I get to tell you why I have to make a certain decision. So what I would like to do is have that opportunity where we schedule something, we can think about what is the appropriate amount of time where I can make it work and you can make it work. But I think we can do that and have regular meetings and
That's
to
awesome.
at least bring up some of the issues. So that's kind of a little bit of my spiel. Why don't you all shoot and we'll have some dialogue back and forth here.
All right, a couple of things. I'd like to add observations to kind of round out some of the things that you said, if you don't mind.
Please.
With the board and them wanting to do something completely different. That's the same dialogue I had with the board members. We have a great relationship with our board. Our organization was formed because what we kept seeing happening was misinformation being
Yep.
provided from the administration, very one-sided, very agenda-focused, very adult-focused messaging, flat-out lies being presented to the board, and then they vote on something, and then it isn't until after something's passed that they hear from their constituents that, no, this isn't what we wanted at all. So we tried to get ahead of that a little bit, and that's where our organization kind of came about. And so the board, 6 of the 7 board members love us. I got off on the wrong foot with one of them, and I don't really understand if we can ever rectify that, but that's a different story. So as long as there is transparency and accountability and people doing what's best for kids, we're going to be your best friend.
Yep.
And I can already tell that that's the direction that we're headed in. So our organization has really gained the strength that it has and the support that it has because of the anonymous nature. Not so much anonymous. People who come to us, we know who they are. We can validate the information that they provide, but we protect them. So when a teacher comes to us and tells us about a concern in the classroom, if they came to the administration, there's a history of retaliation, that kind of thing, or even just a fear that it could happen. So we give them that layer of support and protection. So we offer the same thing to you. If you tell us, frankly, this will never work because this group out here will never have it, I'm not going to run to the media and go, well, he can't do it because over here. But you tell us that's what's happening, and we'll work with you to find a way around that, or even reach out to that group and find a collaborative arrangement and bring everybody to the table in a supportive, collective way. So my point there is you can be frank with us. Hi, Sheldon. How are you?
Got a new one here, so let me.
Absolutely.
Marty, Pollio. Nice to meet you.
And I know Tyra is also joining us, so we still have one more at least on the way. So just know that offer is there.
Yep,
We
I
respect
appreciate
that
that.
confidentiality. We need someone who's going to be frank with us in order for us to bring you solutions, and also to just simply understand why something can happen. We want to understand why something happened. We'll take it. I'd much rather have that happen than be lied to or ignored or told that something's not a problem when we flat out know it is. The reason we gained the reputation that we did of being kind of a thorn in the side it's okay, is because we were told that's not a problem. Yes, it is, and here are more examples. Well, that's still not a problem, and it's just you. No, it's not. Here's more and more, and so we got louder and louder, and we didn't want it to go that way, but that's how people finally started listening.
Right. It's the reputation of we're troublemakers, but we weren't ever bringing problems forward to say you're screwing it up. It was this needs to be addressed. How can we fix it?
Yeah.
And here's feedback we've gotten from teachers or parents or students that would fix it. Here's an easy fix. La 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 la. I'm going to go do this. And so very ivory tower solutions.
Well, I'll say this. First of all, there's an ineptitude right now in systems. And so a lot of the problems that you all have encountered that I think have come from no systems and very last minute decision making. So no one makes a decision, Well, now we're up to the deadline and now we've got to rush this out, and the whole community blows up. And then it's about everyone trying to put out the fire, and that is where misinformation gives out and lies. But the heart of the problem lies in the fact that the systems and planning is so ineffective that big changes for 18-19 should be done in September and October and November and vetted out with plenty of conversation where discussion is made. But what ends up happening is it's pushed down the road. March, April comes, June comes, and all of a sudden, I mean, the elementary school change that you all faced recently was, to me, now you all might have known about it, but from my perspective, being on the outside, it seemed that it was all done so last minute, so as opposed to like long, lengthy conversations and a system of opportunity for people to speak. And I just think that's epidemic of everything that I've seen to this point is last minute and no decision. And then it
Then you
just
have to do
becomes
something.
this firestorm of everyone, and it just
Or
doesn't
the
need to
state
be.
comes in and
That's right.
decides to make some
Yeah,
changes
and
for
then-
you,
So, I mean, I
yes.
think that's one thing, and the second thing is, I think we have a current system in the central office, and this is over schools, this is my honest opinion, where the assistant superintendent's job is to protect their schools and kind of nothing to see here, as opposed to, we have a problem here and we need to fix it.
Yes.
True leadership.
And
That's what they don't have.
it's a lot of, is the system itself, the way it's been set up, where they're competitive and not, we don't want any of our schools to be seen as struggling. But we would never do that as a principal, where we wouldn't say, where these 5 to 8 teachers are really struggling, what's the plan here? And the plan doesn't mean fire them, you know, maybe a couple need a different career, but maybe 3 or 4 or 5 just need support, professional development, and a plan, and maybe a different setting, a different schedule, a different something
A
else.
supportive principal.
But a supportive principal, but I mean, you know, we should do that as schools too, and say, there is, and I'd probably talk too much, so, you know, my first meeting with the assistant superintendents was, I want you to look at TEL survey data, which I think is clearly indicative of climate and culture. And I think is more important right now than achievement scores. But TEL survey data, and I want your 5 most struggling schools and your plan for next year to turn that around. And you could just see the pain and the suffering on their faces of, I don't want to do that. And they're good people, so it's not a matter of being bad people. They're good people, and they want all of their principals to succeed, and they want to help them succeed. So saying someone is struggling is a tough thing, but that's what has to change.
Yes.
So, I mean, we've got to get out of that culture of last minute, and then also nothing to see over here, everything's fine. And it's not fine, and people are starting to realize that, so I'm behind you on that.
Excellent. Well, we have a fun little activity for you.
All right,
Yay!
you got an activity, all right.
These are some cards with some talking points about things that are passions for us.
Okay,
They may or may not be telling as far as like if we're opposed to it or in favor of it, it's just a topic. And
Okay.
so what we want for you to do is pick them, there's definitely more here than we can talk about today, but pick them in priority of what you think needs to be addressed.
okay,
And A, what you see the problem, and B, what you see the solution.
okay, do my best, all
I'm just gonna lay them out here,
right.
and you can see which ones are attractive to you.
I'll take human
or
relations for
priority
200,
you.
please, Gabe.
This is like a psychology experiment.
No, it's like Jeopardy. Everything must be answered in the form of a
I should
question.
have put categories, because I do have 3 schools in here.
And dollar amounts.
Yes, dollar amount, that's right.
Yes. Look at that, it's a nice even number too.
Let's see what I'm gonna take first. Well, the first thing I'm gonna take, and I don't want this to be in necessarily any particular order. Okay, so I'm not saying this one jumps to so I wanna talk about that first.
Okay.
So, this one right here, and I'm gonna say public confidence is a little deeper than just confidence. And when I say public, I wanna say that this deals with, first of all, teacher and staff morale is the biggest problem, because we have 15,000 JCPS employees, and would we know anyone in this city not either work for JCPS, have a student in JCPS, or have a friend that works in JCPS? So I would say just about every person in this city would say yes, maybe 75% of the city. If out of 15,000, 10 or 12,000 are sending a negative message about what they deal with every day in schools, whether it's a bus driver, a teacher, a clerk, central office person, we are having 75% of our city get negative message and perception about JCPS right now. So obviously that is a huge, huge issue. We have to improve morale, and we have to improve culture and climate. So I'm gonna give you my belief on morale in an organization. There's 4 things that have to happen for positive morale and positive culture. And right now, I think JCPS is 0 for 4 as an organization, and a lot of our schools are 0 for 4. So number 1, the people that work for the organization feel supported to do their job to the best of their ability. And so teachers should not be having to carry paper down to copiers. They should have what they want to be successful. We have a $1.4 billion. Now, I'm not saying if a teacher says, I want an iPad cart in my room, all right, that's $30,000. Hopefully we can help you get there, but that's not gonna happen overnight. But we shouldn't be saying they have $200 to spend on the year, like we have a bookstore of some account. What do you need to be successful? I need 1,000 pencils. Then 1,000 pencils is what you get. So I mean, that discipline support, if a teacher needs a student removed, they need to be removed. And we'll talk about why later, but they need to be removed. You need to be able to teach, and you need to have the professional development. You need to be successful. So number 1 is support. Like they have to feel supported, whatever that is. Number 2, they've got to know someone's in charge. All right?
Yes.
That someone is in charge, and they trust that person is in charge. I mean, without question. I think that's a problem in our district as a whole right now. No one knew who was in charge, no one knew who was making the decision. But teachers want a principal that they know is in charge, and they trust that difficult things are gonna happen. I found that I tell the staff, we have 80-some% free and reduced lunch at DOS, some challenging kids that have terrible situations at home. We're gonna have problems, guys. Things are gonna happen in here this year, there are problems, but it's how you handle that and how we deal with it. But they know I'm gonna be in charge, so they have to be in charge. I think third is there's more of a mission or a feel for we're doing this more than just show up to work for a paycheck. Like there is a purpose for what we're doing, and the organization has to do what we're about here. It's not just show up, do your job, and leave and collect your paycheck every 2 weeks. So there's a feel like we have a collective mission together. And then finally, the last one's a yes or no question. Is the organization headed in the right direction? And if more people than not say no, it should be 75 or 80% say yes. If it's not that number, you got a big problem. And so those 4 things, like what in JCPS, do people feel supported to do their job right now? Bus drivers, teachers, anybody? Probably no. Do they feel someone is in charge? Probably no. Do they feel like there's more of a common mission, vision, purpose for what we do other than show up to work? Probably no. Is the organization headed in the right direction? Probably no. And so we got big problems here with this.
I would add a 5th.
What's that?
I would add a 5th.
Okay, what do you got?
Communication. There has
Yeah.
to be open lines of communication, can't have siloed thinking.
So
People have to feel that they can
I think that's a
branch out.
support. I think that comes into support, I do, but I agree with you.
Then you're broadening
Yeah.
what the examples you use.
But here is where our current administration missed the boat. They think communication is emails and those type of things, where
One
communication is more like
Encoded
this.
messaging.
Yeah.
Control
I meant a true
messaging.
dialogue.
Yeah.
So I think I'm part of a startup, and our CEO said much along the lines of what you said. He said, I can't tell you everything, but I'm as open as I can be. And when I talk to other startup CEOs and venture capital firm, they're surprised how open I am with
Yeah.
all the
Yeah,
employees.
that's right.
And how all the employees can be open with me.
That's correct.
It's that's what I meant by communication.
Yeah, no, I agree with
and then that branches out
Well,
too
Right.
to the community. 'Cause
And I think that's gonna be vital because JCPS, I just graduated a senior on Thursday, and 13 years, it has been this mentality of you get cynical because you just don't trust
Yeah.
everything. So there's going to be a healing period. So everything you're saying, I'm
Yeah.
just like,
Yeah.
so excited, but it's going to take time because you have to almost be polar opposite to correct that behavior
Yeah.
that's been going on for so long. Like you said, it's
It's an abusive
epidemic.
relationship.
It is an abusive relationship.
Well,
for
just
the-
a great example is the last board meeting. So if you watched our last board meeting, there's several issues. First of all, our board is spending the better part of 2 meetings arguing about resource teachers, 4 resource teachers, which are important, but we've got to find a way to get them through, like spending a lot of time arguing about 4 resource teachers. Now, if you want to argue about 40, okay, that should be an argument that takes, but 4 resource teachers probably should be. But 2 people on the cabinet ended up getting beat up by our board members, and our board members were not wrong in what they said, but it was misdirected. The superintendent should stand up and say, this was a mistake, it's on me, it shouldn't have happened, I won't let it, and I'll deal with my people tomorrow or after this, but this is a mistake, it's on me. Second of all, here's what we need to do with this. We need 4 resource teachers at this number of days, whatever it is, this is why we need it, and that never happened. And so that is the leadership, like someone is in charge, and instead of just sitting there and letting this go on for 2 hours. And so all of those are just big things, but I would just say that morale and of our workers and culture and climate is so important for public confidence, and not just confidence, but the thousands and thousands of people who know JCPS employees who walk out every day and say, this is ridiculous.
It's the Costco mentality. Costco spends $0 on advertising because their philosophy is if we treat every employee with respect and treat them well, every single one of them is our advertising team. And
That's correct.
That's the same.
The secret is to minimize turnover,
Right.
create advocates.
Yeah.
Customers
I
are
agree.
happy.
And there does need to be a community pride, because if you can flip that, you can get the
Yep.
community. There is no pride really in JCPS in
Yep.
the city of Louisville.
That's correct.
Well, and teachers don't feel heard, and so they don't feel like they have any control over their
Mhm.
destiny. So even if, one of the reasons they don't feel it's headed in the right direction is because they see what it needs to do, what changes need to happen,
Yeah.
and nobody cares for their opinion. So they need to be part of the conversation and
Yeah.
feel appreciated and heard as well, for that message to change. And then I think, another thing too I'd like to add is, just proactive messaging. I think you alluded to this in part of your other statement, but we're so busy playing whack-a-mole
Yep.
that we can't get in front of anything. And so with all of these concerns, sending out messaging that takes control of the
Yeah.
message.
I got it.
So that we're shaping the message. And I know they added a new marketing person, but I would argue that your strategic cabinet level person should be in control of marketing. Like there should be somebody out there proactively changing people's perceptions of the branding of JCPS. We have an opportunity really to change people's, this time it's different.
Yeah.
And we need to seize that opportunity
That's
as to
right.
why this time is different and help people
Yep.
see that change.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other on that? Hi there.
Hello, how are you?
This is Tyra.
Walker.
Hi, Marty Pollio.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Sorry, you had the wrong time.
Yes, my reminder was for 5.
I'm sorry. So you're early.
Yes.
Well, I would probably jump to, I'm not saying this is the most important, but I think toxic central office then always bleeds down into schools. And so there are many issues, many systems issues that have to do with toxic central office. But essentially I've called the culture right now crabs in a bucket.
Yes.
Where they're just
Yep.
trying to crawl on top of each other to get favor. There's a lot of reasons for it. The biggest one is lack of decision-making. That's a big one. That no one is making the decisions. It's a leadership issue. I found that meetings at central office are run ridiculously poor. I've also found that central office, I would say, other than the assistant superintendents, when's the last time you were in a school? Like, when's the last time you were in a school? I mean, and not dog and pony show, take you to 4 classrooms and
Right.
then,
When they
as
know
a
you're
principal, like, let me take you to my 5 best teachers, run you through here real quick, tell the APs, watch those kids, make sure we don't get near them, and then we'll hustle you out the door. But I mean, in the cafeteria, in any classroom, walking around, having conversations with kids, like, those are the things that need to happen. We used to have this thing called dialogue teams in JCPS when I was an assistant principal. And what happened was about every 2 or 3 years, might have been every 2, a central office team that usually was the assistant superintendent, 2 or 3 people from cabinet, And then 2 or 3 people they would pull from other schools, and a team of 6 would essentially go do a 2-day audit of a school. And it was JCPS driven. It was not for the purpose of, we're gonna give you this gotcha report and the principal needs to leave, but it was essentially, we're gonna spend 2 days in here looking at data, going in every classroom, talking to teachers and students, and at the end of 2 days, we're gonna give you a report that says, here's what we found great about your school, here's what we think you need to focus on and improve. It did 2 things. 1, it gave a school a great feedback. 2, it got central office people like immersed in a school for two or 3 days. So someone who's in finance had to spend 2 or 3 days in a school and in classrooms and talking to teachers, and it reconnected them with the school. And that just, and of course they got rid of it about 5 years ago because principals didn't like it. You know, well, of course principals did. No one feels comfortable with a team of people spending 2 or 3 days in their school, but gosh, we've got to be better than that, right? Where principals don't like it, so we're not going to do it anymore. So, I mean, that has to happen, systems at central office, but I think we've just lost our way with central office people having a connection to school, and they end up fighting over things like org charts. Like, I've never heard so much talk about org charts, when I'm like, what does this have to do with
You have never worked at Humana, have you?
Well, yeah, no, I haven't. But I mean, there's only so much that can deal with org charts, but I think toxic central office has led to toxic schools and a lot of toxic relationships between schools and central office too. So, thoughts or questions on that?
I mean, my concern, and I'm new to this, I have a 2nd grader who's going into 3rd grade, so I haven't been in this long, but I am a parent at Malton. I don't feel like you guys are a $1 billion company. You don't reflect what a $1 billion company would be doing.
I agree.
Your central office does not seem business-like. They don't take processes. I mean, they have no process. Just like you said with Malton, why would it take until May for us to be able to know what's going to happen to our school? I should have known that in October, September. And if it was a business, especially a $1 billion revenue streaming business, for me, I expect you guys to run like a business.
I agree, 100%.
I don't want education to run like a business, but there does have to be a business
It
aspect.
has to be
management.
process, it has to be procedures, it has to be things that look the same. Our schools, if I talk to one principal, I should expect the same reports that one principal gives to their assistant superintendent is the exact same report that another. I expect for you guys to tell me exactly what you look at for an assistant superintendent or for a teacher or for a resource instructor. I expect those things. I expect when you guys are hiring that you hire the best people in Louisville and not just pick up people off the street who say, I don't know, I just got the job. And I'm like, you make like $85,000. How did you?
Or the one that I got when they hired our current principal, and I asked the leading superintendent, why was this person chosen, what are the skills, and they said, I can't discuss that with you, it's personal confidentiality, you need to talk to the principal.
Yeah.
I just wanted, and it goes back to that trust, tell me what you saw so that we can then spread the word.
So let's be clear, and I agree, I want you to say, that's systems thinking. So whether it's a
Systems, yeah.
business, like I don't think just pulling a business person into education works, and I don't think it has worked, because I wouldn't jump into the medical field and say, but that doesn't mean systems thinking should not occur. But what we have right now is a significant lack of leadership development. So if Shawnee High School were to open up tomorrow, are we confident that we have a bullpen that says this is the next person who is stepping up and is ready and is trained to take on a task of a school that has had multiple principals and seems to be going the wrong way? And so I can't say I know a whole lot about it, so I don't want to comment specifically on any one school right now. But are we confident that that would happen, or would we go back into a process of, well, there'll be an interim in there until we find somebody, and it lasts and it lasts and it lasts, and then, well, we'll take someone who is not prepared, and unfairly so, not given the training to handle that situation.
Yes.
So for me at Doss, I had 8 years of experience as a principal at J-Town. I took all the lessons I learned in 8 years as a principal at J-Town and walked into a priority school. And it made huge differences, the fact that I had all this experience. If it had been someone brand new, they're trying to figure out how to survive for 2 years. And
Drinking from a fire hydrant.
and our priority schools do not have the luxury of waiting 2 years. And so we have to develop I use the term bullpen, just like in baseball, that this pitcher is not doing the job, gonna come out, and this one is ready to go. And right now, we don't have a ready to go.
No.
And we have got to, I'm a big believer in having a strong leadership development program. Yes, it's gonna take our best assistant principals, but I think we need to be able to identify who are the best 8 to 10 assistant principals in this district and be aggressive about training them for a school like Shawnee that says, have your plan ready. Like, we need to take the next 6 months for you to look at, now whether it's that school but you have a philosophy, a focus, that when you walk in, this is what I'm gonna do for the first year. And that is what we're missing right now. So instead, we put people in, unfairly so, that are not prepared, and we expect them sink or swim. And then we're surprised when they sink, and they have the same thing. They don't have the supports that needed to be successful. So leadership development is huge.
I would agree with that.
And there's also pressure coming down from the top that's more focused on how things look, or test scores, or adult-centered concerns. And when you have a principal that's been placed there by the superintendent as opposed to by an SBDM, their loyalty is to the superintendent and making things look like everything's running like a clock when it really isn't. So sweep it under the rug, don't talk back, don't push. So what you really need is a principal like you who has the backbone to actually say, no, this is what our kids need, and not be in fear because it's a priority school that somebody's gonna come in and shut you down because you talked back and actually stood up for the kids.
Because
So-
obviously, kids in a priority school don't need the standard education that work
Right.
at a manual or a Butler and things like that. They need something different, and it can't look like every other school does.
Now, having said that, we have different types of schools. And I said this earlier, but a big issue in this district is schools within a school.
Yes.
And so schools like Shawnee and Doss, for the most part, not all kids, but for the most part, every kid is at risk. Every kid breaks my heart when I hear some of the stories of kids that, like, how in the world they come to school
But they
and
come to school every
manage
day.
and make it is amazing to me, and I feel lucky and privileged with, and I tell anybody this, with what I grew up with. I don't know if I would have made it. So just about every kid at Doss has some type of hardship or challenge or difficulty, and most of our priority schools are that way. On the other spectrum, we have many schools that work very hard to divide the kids. Here are the upper level kids, here are the struggling kids in this school, and this kind of underbelly within a school of those kids over there, and we have to figure out ways to end that, where those kids are getting the support they need to be successful. Because what happens is they're fine accountability-wise, because they have enough AP kids that they're in the upper 1/4% of the state, and everybody celebrates them. Meanwhile, you have this underbelly of the school that is not surviving, and it's the same kids or that are at Dawson,
Yeah.
Shawnee.
Automatically, because they're bussed in, they're automatically
Mhm.
assumed to be this track, and there's
They're-
no diversity, which, that is kind of that card right there.
Yeah, that's right.
We want authentic diversity in our schools, not on paper, it looks like we're mixed when we're really two different
So,
schools.
my belief on that, and it's always been my belief, is that, and this gets into deeper learning, in which I am a strong believer of. I implemented the academy model at Dawson, project-based learning, that we have to get away from very traditional types of learning. I mean, you hear, I talk to my faculty, and for those of you that have teenagers, you know the teenager look of, I just don't care, like I don't care, like,
Why do I need to know
why
this?
do I need to do this, I don't care, and
I'm never gonna use this.
I've got a
Yes.
7th grade daughter now, who's now the look is starting to pop up, unfortunately.
I have a 7th grade son, he's.
Do you? Yeah, so you're probably just now starting to get that look. But sometimes it's hard for, like, my daughter comes home with this work, and I'm like, really, who gives a damn, really, to be honest? I mean, what are you doing this for? And so we have to do things that are more authentic for kids and get them engaged. And kids from high socioeconomic families, they do it because I need a good college transcript, or if I don't, like I was, I know that I'll be in trouble when I get home. Our kids from poverty don't have those for the most part. And I tell people, the freshmen at Doss, you start talking about college transcript, you might as well be talking about their 401k, because it's the same to them, like what, 4 years from now, like whatever. So I mean, that's why I believe we have to do authentic learning projects, like deep learning, and where diversity comes in. I think, yes, AP is important to focus on, but I think that's a small bit of it. What really needs to be done is to ensure that our AP kids are having deep, authentic type learning, but that our comprehensive kids, our ECE resource, are doing the same things in class and not sit down, shut up, do a worksheet, turn it into me, I'll give you some points. The principal comes in, it looks like you're working, and then we wonder why they're disengaged. So for me, diversity is a lot. I want to walk into a school, I want to see, are the best teachers, not just with one, but are they spread out? Would we say the best teachers deal with maybe advanced kids, but also some of the, like, there should be, like, do all of our kids have access to the best teachers? I see it with my daughter, she's 2 separate schools in her school, and that, as a parent, it's different, but that bothers me. But could I walk in an ECE resource classroom and see the same type of things happening that are in an AP class? And yeah, there's gonna have to be some interventions and some different things, but they should be doing the same things. And I use teachers laugh at this when I say this, I use it like a basketball court, and I put up my senior year basketball picture from 1989 when I graduated high school, and I weighed about 125 pounds and had the tiny little shorts on, and I'm standing there 125 pounds, and I put LeBron James' picture next to me, and I look at the difference in these two people. I said, you know what, we still all go out and shoot on a 10-foot basket. Like, they didn't lower the basket for me, it's the same basket, so we all have to have, so when diversity, I talk about that, it's more about experiences for me, like are all the kids getting the same experiences? And all too often it's no in our schools. They laugh at that picture, by the way, it's pretty embarrassing.
80s basketball.
With that in mind, I'm an ESL teacher. One of my big concerns in the classroom are the, what I call the teaching and testing schedule for the proficiencies and all of that. And I don't
Is
feel.
this the one we're tackling now?
Yeah, that's my card.
That's her baby.
Okay, go ahead.
I find it incredibly unfair how our kids are expected to go on the same schedule and pacing as reg ed kids. I believe that they should be exposed to the same content and all of that. I don't think anything should be lowered for them, but the speed of which we move, and in fact, that's one of their accommodations on their PSPs. So just can you speak to that? Just that I'm sure you're familiar with it, and how it affects ECE and the LEP kids. And
So you're saying, like, if I moved to Kenya tomorrow and had to test in that language a year from now, I wouldn't do well?
Yeah.
Probably not. Here is what I would say on this. Outcomes are important, and we always have to be cognizant of outcomes. We can't be a district that says, and when I mean outcomes, I mean achievement scores. So we can't be just driving where we're ignoring outcomes. Having said that, it shouldn't be the driver of what we do. And we need to be more about culture, climate, experiences students have in the classroom, equality and experiences in the classroom, student engagement, listening to student voice, all of these things, which I believe, if we do those well, they will result in a positive achievement. But for me, achievement needs to be more like, all right, like this, all right, and maybe the next year it's like this, but maybe it's like that, it's like
Trending
that,
positive.
and it's like that,
Positive trending.
and it's like this. So in the end, it's a positive trend. So I'll be completely frank with you. Last year, we went up 10 points at Doss, 7th highest gain in the state on test scores. A lot of it was culture and climate. This year, the likelihood of us making AMO and going up is practically zero. And I knew that when it happened. And so what will end up happening is it will, well, he wasn't successful as a principal this year. Well, I did the same dang things I did the year before with the same teachers and this.
There's
so-
only so much left you
Yeah,
can
well,
give
and I
before-
mean, so why should we judge teachers based upon that when,
Because everyone has a
Same thing.
quarterly growth mindset in their
well, it's
head.
what have you done for me lately?
Education works on
So-
years, timescales. One thing I'd add to the testing, why in the world does my first grader be tested on average 1.2 times a day? That is insane. We don't even do that when you're in the professional workforce.
Yeah.
We treat these kids worse than, if you were to treat a worker, like an employee that way, you'd be violating federal labor laws. But yet
Well,
we
it
do it to
depends on what
kids.
you mean by testing, so I'll be honest on my beliefs on.
Spelling tests, math assessments, math pre-assessments,
So-
reading assessments,
Okay.
writing assessments.
So here's what I believe.
Every week.
So I believe, well, first of all, let me finish here and
Yeah.
then I'll go to you. So this is what I believe. Our ESL teacher, I have, unfortunately, one's retiring, two of the best ESL teachers anywhere in this world that are committed to kids, that do unbelievable stuff with them, that care, I mean, will drive them around, committed to them, do great work with them in the classroom. They had an international festival about 2 weeks ago that was the first time I see a lot of kids smile and happy. Yet last year on English 2 reading, they had 8% score proficient. I mean, what am I gonna get on them for that and say you were unsuccessful as a teacher? So we have to get out of that. Now, there has to be a point where, yes, data does matter and we gotta make some decisions about it, but we've gotten so much into this data-driven thing that we ignore common sense. So a lot of that is a state issue that hopefully there's gonna be some correction on ESL. But I mean, I think we have to have some real perspective about, we're not expecting a kid who's been there for 2 years to be proficient on an English 2 assessment, that they just learned English.
But
So-
then, if there's a high concentration of students that come from these
That is-
backgrounds, the school
that is
gets put in
true.
priority status,
Yep.
the teachers get labeled, the students get labeled, and it's a
That is true.
lose-lose situation,
There is
so-
no doubt about it. There is no
I
doubt
wanted
about it.
to expound on the comment, or that's probably not the right word, but you get the idea. Data and data-driven decisions is what I do for a living. And what I can tell you is looking at the data and the data-driven decisions that they're making, it's not even a question of common sense. There's like decisions you would make that are data-driven, common sense decisions, whole big line of crap, then the data-driven decisions they're actually making.
Yeah.
I
Well-
mean, to say they're data-driven decisions is
I don't disagree
really
with that. I don't.
puts my entire
Yeah.
field like down.
I don't disagree with that, but, what I mean by that too is, we have people making these decisions who aren't trained in data analysis.
You have people
So-
that are processing the data that aren't trained. When I asked for raw data, they didn't know what that meant. When I asked, well, how do you ensure data integrity? They was like, what's that? I'm like, oh my, how are you making any data-driven
They
decision?
don't store metadata, they don't.
Yeah, I asked
They
for
run everything in
metadata.
Excel files.
Yeah,
So if you look at like the way the data management system is set up now, it says make your request.
yeah.
But without metadata, how do I know what to request for? I don't know what you have, I don't know what, So I asked for a bulk data download and they're like, what's that? I'm like, oh wow.
Yeah.
How do I explain? It's a very large text file.
I understand, I mean, I'm
That
not
was
gonna lie,
scary.
that's not my, I took plenty of statistics courses, but that's not my expertise either.
JCPS needs a very good chief
Yeah.
data scientist.
I agree, I guess I'm speaking more from the teacher level of collecting data on whether the kids are being successful at what they're attempting to teach. And so, data is not on kids just a black and white type, they got it, they don't got it, and there's nothing else, and so there's a lot of gray in that too. Now, having said that on the assessment piece, here's what I believe on assessment. I believe kids should be assessed every day in every class. But what I don't believe that the assessment is a paper and pencil test. I believe that every teacher should have a goal for the day when they're teaching, like something I'm striving to get the kids to learn today. and I have a way to assess whether the kids got it. Now, that assessment does not mean that that score goes in some kind of grade book or anything like that.
That's exactly the way it happens
Essentially,
right
what
now.
it means is I am collecting data on whether my students got this today. And so maybe that means turn and talk to a partner on, I'm about to put this question up, and I want you to teach your partner X, whatever it is. And the teacher comes around and listens to conversations. Yeah, I think you got that. I think you're where and I go around, and maybe I don't hit everybody, but I hit 15 kids, and if 12, 13 of them got it, it's a pretty good indication that they've got it.
And you could even, with she, teacher, could even say, what technique did I use that day? These techniques are this more effective for this class, because next year,
Yeah.
it's a completely different class, so you might want to try different techniques.
Yeah. So,
See, I agree. No, what's happening today, literally 1.24 times a day, they have a written assessment that they turn in.
yeah.
And this is first grade. You have spelling tests in kindergarten. I mean, that's
I agree.
insane.
I agree.
Part
I mean, I'm
of
a
that
parent.
is
I've been there
the,
too.
you know, is the Common Core,
Yeah.
we have standards that we have to teach,
Yeah,
like, so
I
I'm
know
not
that.
defending it at all, in fact, I'm highly against it, but you have teachers that are literally doing what they're
JCPS
being
gave
asked
rise
to
to
do, and it's not
James.
JCPS,
Well,
it's
and
the state,
that's
you
a
know.
question that I have always kind of put forth, and I don't know how much you know this, but, you know, we are the biggest district in the state. 1 in 7 kids in the state are a Jefferson County district. We are a district of innovation, which the previous administration did absolutely nothing with. We are the big man in the room. If we wanted to, why can we not throw that weight around and say, this is what we're going to do? Like you said, this is the decision that we've made, this is the direction we're going in, lead follower, get the heck out of our way. We're gonna make changes, it's gonna take 5 years for this to really turn around, but this is
It
what
will.
we're doing.
Yeah.
You
It will.
follow us, instead of this constant, oh,
We're always
well,
in fear, we're
I
always in
don't,
fear.
everybody's afraid, but it's like, you look at what they did in Finland, and back in the 70s, everybody's like, oh my god, they're going crazy, what are they doing, this is the dumbest thing ever, and now they're the #1 school system in the world.
Yes.
But-
Student mix, they don't have the
But I'm
power
just
we have.
saying, well, that's a whole nother issue, but that's a societal issue, but I'm saying is, why not be bold?
Yeah, I agree, and that's the way I've always been. I mean, you saw the governor's ringing endorsement of me on Friday, did anybody see that? When he said he's a decent choice for the interim, and everyone called me, the governor was over the moon about you, and I read it, I was like, decent choice in the interim doesn't sound too ringing to me, but I guess if everyone thinks that's a ringing endorsement, all right.
I would be concerned if he was, if he
Yeah,
did
I
give you
know,
a ring.
I know, so.
Yeah, right.
This is, I wouldn't get into this too much, but my philosophy on grading is so far out of the box, and that gets into assessment, but if you want to learn, I mean, it's standards-based grading. I did my dissertation on standards-based grading, and I'm even to the point where,
It's a little one on the go.
which a lot of people disagree with me on this, and that's fine, that we need to get rid of timelines for kids. We don't have them. That if we are expecting a kid to learn systems of equations, students will be able to learn to be able to solve systems of equations. Then why do we say, if you haven't learned it by October, sorry about your luck, you're done. And so our job is if a kid if they come to a teacher in March and say, I know I'm not passing, the teacher says, well, look up on the chart there. You haven't got a star under solving systems of equations. Well, that was back in March, or in October. Yep. So I tell you what, come after school, I'm gonna have a session for you and maybe 4 other students on solving systems of equations. Go through that session. Take home this homework, which I believe should be differentiated based on student need. Take it home and work on that practice. Bring it back and I'll assess you. And once you prove to me you got it, then you've got the star in solving systems of equations. And now your grade reflects that proficiency in solving systems of equations. So what it does is it takes off any deadline essentially, and teachers get very nervous about that. But that is a belief of mine, and that's what should constitute the grade, whether kids know systems of equations or not. and nothing else.
Because if they just keep moving on grade after grade after grade without accomplishing some of the basic stuff, then here
That's
we
how
have
we have an
high
achievement
school
gap.
where they
And we've had
can't
a couple
read.
teachers at Shawnee like, and it's a very different mentality. It's a very,
And it's a lot more
but
expensive.
it's the whole point of what's the goal of education? Is it to meet a timeline or is it to understand a
To sort
concept?
kids, which I don't believe it is.
I have an example, a real world example. So when I was teaching at U of L 7 years ago, I just stepped into a class as a favor for a friend, and I taught the speed school engineering students, and this is how relevant it is because it even applies at that level. I got in trouble because I wasn't, quote, covering everything in the book, unquote. Literally, that's what the department chair said to me. I said to her, I never did when I was a professor here, and it was never my intention. I'd rather the kids actually walk away with knowing something
Yep.
than just saying I covered everything in the book that they magically somehow know it. Because I'd rather they be good engineers so that when I drive across a bridge, it doesn't fall down.
Yeah.
That's what I want.
So then how
Simple.
do you go about changing that throughout because it's easier to do in one classroom or one
They
school.
want cookie
How do
cutter.
you?
Yeah, well, there's no question about it.
Cookie-cutter
First of all,
mentality.
it comes from an instructional focus and belief and common belief about teaching and learning, which if I ask 90% of, maybe more, people in JCPS, what do we stand for right now instructionally? No one could say. They might say PLCs, but that's not an instructional, that's a collaboration. And so no one could say, so first of all, and this is a long-term thing, this is not a 1 year, 2 year thing. This comes into, this is what we're about, this is what our PD is gonna be about, this is what every school is gonna be about. Now, they can make it their own, but every school is gonna be about this. And defining that and being clear about it for principals, and holding them accountable to doing that. That is a several-year process, but it starts with essentially defining that, getting input, talking about it, here's where we're heading, and making sure everybody knows it.
Do you feel like in going in that path, are you getting a lot of pushback or a lot more welcoming?
Right now, it is incredibly welcoming from especially school-based folks. The central office folks are a little nervous, but school-based folks are incredibly supportive
Okay.
because there is that disconnect between schools and central office right now, and they want someone who knows the struggles. I told principals today, 1 week ago today, I was standing in the cafeteria telling kids to pick up their trash. So I get it, I know. Now, that doesn't necessarily just automatically translating to me making it better for schools.
Right.
But I mean, I know the struggles. Like, I know, for instance, that as a principal, 4 years ago, we would get a phone book essentially for the district that said, when you need this, here is the person to call, and here are the people under them. They stopped that 4 years ago. And I'm still looking up 1213 phone book, and the reason they said that is because, well, once it's printed, it's already out of date because people leave. And I'm like, well, that's an issue, first of all, that people are leaving
Yeah.
in that number. And number two, you know, that is neither here nor there. I should be able as a principal to know if this happens in the school, here's, and I don't care, it doesn't have to be a book, it could be online where I click it and it pops up in a PDF
Yes,
file.
yes.
Like, so I don't need a book,
Updated.
but I do need to be able to say, if, you know, we are having power surges in our school, who in the world do I call here?
If a bullet
You
comes
could-
through a
you could have
classroom
a- you could have
window,
a-
what do you
You
do?
could have an online phone,
Yeah.
book that would do it, and then every night it would auto-generate and create
Yeah,
a new
of course.
PDF
Yeah,
phone book.
tied to
That's
the
easy,
HR.
I could do that.
Yeah, so I
can
mean,
program that.
just things like that, I think people are excited that, all right, he has a good understanding of what we face every
That
day.
excites me because obviously the school-based side of JCPS is a much larger
Yep.
side than, so if you've got their support, that hopefully will mean that change will happen
Yep.
quicker.
Now, having said that, it is easy to get caught in the muck of all of this stuff that happens at central office. So, I mean, that's gonna be incumbent on me to go to schools and be in schools and hear this, and not to be the dog and pony show up at school, like take me to the cafeteria. Like, you're not gonna scare me going into any school. I'm fine to be in any cafeteria or any hallway change. Like, I've been at J-Town and I've been at Doss, so, you know, I've dealt with the toughest kids that are in any school, so It's not an issue for me, so let's go to the cafeteria, let's go class change, you know, that's, I don't need the dog and pony show, and I'm not gonna be upset if I see two kids fighting. You know, we might talk about why and what we gotta do to fix that, but I know that, it's a part of what I've done, so I expect to see that at times in schools, not all the time, not too often, but I expect to see it, and I'll be, what is your response to this, how are you handling this?
So I'll ask this question, and I probably won't get an answer, but that's okay. What did you think of that, the head of the union for the bus drivers challenging the board to take one of their bus routes last year? And like, there was no response, there were no takers, and he was like, not one of our, you know, nice routes, we're talking one of our,
Like
one of our top.
1220, I bus 1220 out of Doss, every time I see that bus leave, I'm like, I don't know how that bus driver does it every day, because it's every tough kid on one bus, and I read some of the bus referrals, and I'm like, good grief. So, no, I mean, you know, it's, I'll answer it this way. I don't know about board members, I don't know if that's their job as board members to do that. I mean, they are elected to drive policy and be informed by central office people, but I think we should have central office people that are very familiar with the issues and problems in schools. So I know bus 1220, I do. I know we've got to give a lot of support to that bus driver, and we've got to be there and climb on that bus at times, and if you're having problems, bring it back. Well, I know that. We can't ignore the problem. Central office people don't know that, and they have to have better perspective of that.
With what's going on in central office, would we expect to see some changes within your 6 months or 9 months? Would we expect to see changes within cabinet members or upper level people in central office?
Yes, you know, I'm in a tentative situation, obviously, that I am interim.
Correct.
Having that be the case, there's not gonna be a whole lot of people, if a job opens, apply for that position in a cabinet level position.
Right.
And especially move here, because, you know, if it were somewhere else and someone was applying for it, you know, let's say permanent chief academic officer. Why would you apply for that position knowing that I'm interim and in 6 months I could be gone, and at the end of the year a new superintendent come in and say, so I don't think our current structure of governance over schools, I don't know if that's the correct word, is working.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there needs to be a significant restructure. But I don't know how much that will happen in the 6 months.
Gotcha.
That will be a difficult process, but there will be changes, yes. The significant changes will be if and when it becomes permanent.
Gotcha. Okay.
Do you remember the study that came back or the audit that came back and said that our central office cabinet members in particular were paid more than they should be, I guess is the easiest way to say that. And then that led to the MAG study, which actually deflected the attention away from what the audit. Do you feel that that is true? Do you feel that some adjustments need to be made to the pay scale?
You know, that's an interesting and difficult one.
And I guess it wasn't just
So-
cabinet, it was the number of employees making over 100,000 a
Yeah.
year, I think was the actual
That
audit.
was probably what it is. Now, I think 100,000 is an arbitrary number. I do, so I know it's meaningful to a lot of people, you know, but it's an arbitrary number. Here is the danger. And I don't think, this is just my belief, I'm a principal today. I don't think our principals I don't know if should get a raise. I'm not saying that, but I don't think our principals should ever see a pay cut. What
No way.
principals deal with on a day, if we want, and there's a lot of research to support that the number one
I'm
driving
agreeing with
thing
you.
Yes.
about a successful school is a great principal.
Yes.
And, you know,
Teachers don't quit.
you know,
Quit schools.
J-Town, for instance, which I spent 8 years on, it was, you know, I get obviously a lot of calls all the time about right or wrong, whether it is or isn't, about the problems at J-Town now. So I'm not saying it was just me, but I do think principles matter. So the answer to that is yes, with the belief, though, that saying administrators and the possibility of, so a perfect example is if Shawnee opens tomorrow, if Iroquois opens tomorrow, if there was any less pay for principals right now, I don't think anyone will apply for the jobs.
Correct.
Anyone, or anyone qualified for the job, and that's what we gotta make. So, yeah, I think we've gotta look at ways to maybe differentiate some salaries a little bit. I don't know, I'm not gonna fool you right now and say I know what the answer to that is.
One thing I can say is my wife has a friend who's a teacher up in Canada, and she was looking at we were looking together at the salaries for principals here, and she was like, even when you adjust for cost of living, she's like, they are paying their principals really, really low. And she's like, there was no way I would take a principal job at your best school
Yeah.
at that
Yeah.
rate. No
But
way.
But if we have people not in the buildings who are in central office, and we're top heavy with the number of people that are making over 100,000 a year, or
The
whatever
Edelman
that
audit
number-
was central office employees making over
Yeah,
100,000.
So
so I
that
think
was
principals
the
were off the
Edelman
table in
So,
that
As
discussion.
long as
not
that's it,
impacted.
I agree with that, but we're all on the same salary scale, so to speak, right now, so that would require a change in that policy. One thing I wanna be careful on, and I've noted this a lot, and this isn't necessarily the $100,000, but we've gotten into this belief, we've gotta cut central office and direct money to schools. All right, there is some truth to that, but there is, what we've ended up with, so many of our departments are now thin, that schools are not getting the service that they need. Great example is, what are we down to, like 2 people district-wide that fix copiers?
Right.
And so you end up with all of these copy machines that sit there and collect dust. Meanwhile, teachers are trying to, and they come in, sorry, we don't have any copy machines. Well, what am I supposed to do? Well, I don't know. And so then they go to the classroom frustrated,
Yep.
can't get the job done because we've cut so many services from central office. Now, you have a principal like me who, I'm not taking that. Like, who do I have to call? Like, I'll keep going
Right.
up until I get the right person, until I get it and someone comes over eventually. But I've got like some political clout and influence after 10 years that a first or second year principal doesn't have.
That was support. You mentioned that in public confidence.
Yep.
But the money
That's
needs to
exactly
come,
support.
it's a budget year, and that's one thing, is the money needs to come from the state. We are underfunded over 13% since 2008. So we're cannibalizing ourselves
Yep.
within the district to rob Peter to pay Paul, when really Frankfurt's the one that needs to be forking over some
Worried
cash.
about that.
And they don't have any money.
Yes, sir.
So if you did remain interim and hopefully not, but if so, and the 6 months was probably transition, what, if anything, would be the one lasting thing that you would want to contribute?
Well, I think without question, it's improved climate and morale of everyone. Now, that's a hard thing to measure, but I think you can in surveys and things like that. Now, what I think that is support to schools and to principals, and I told them this today and I'll meet with them tomorrow. With greater support also comes greater accountability. So you're not gonna be an island by yourself. Now, we are going to do some things that are going to, I know principals are frustrated right now with, it's a touchy situation, but the alternative school decision a couple years ago was one of the worst things that ever happened to this district. And it's been a disaster, and so that has to be fixed. And not that we throw away the key and lock kids up, but some kids are not being successful in a comprehensive school, and we've got to figure out other ways to support that. So that's one, helping schools to be better at discipline management and classroom management and having people come into schools and see it, but then also holding schools accountable for that you're gonna be held accountable for what's going on in the school, and we're gonna know it, and it's not just going to be nothing to see here.
I know an ABA therapist who was telling me about one of her JCPS kids, and this kid was so scary, none of the faculty would get within striking range of this child. Because
Well-
for fear of getting hit. Here's the thing, she worked with the child, and they just thought, like, he's just sitting in class, not doing anything. She worked with the child, it turned out the child thought it was a game. And that's all it was. Once they worked through that and they got over the game mentality, it turned out he learned everything he'd been taught.
Yeah.
He had a photographic memory, and he was actually turned into one of their best students.
That's great.
So challenging children can be combated, or addressed. Combated's probably not the best word. Addressed using techniques like ABA therapy.
Yep.
I mean, these kids have trauma. They
Yep.
you know, I mean, like they were disciplining some kids who were refugees from war zones.
Yeah.
Do you think there's any disciplinary measures JCPS could pull on those kids that a war zone would have done to them?
Right.
I mean,
That
it's
goes back to the
instead of
support.
dealing with the trauma and these
So-
kids need these kinds of
And I'll-
not all these,
Yeah,
but
so I'll go ahead and then I'll answer.
I mean, you said the war zone, well, they're living in a war zone right now.
yeah, no, I
Dealing with kids that have
And we'll, gotta leave?
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
I have about 13 JCPS kids to meet with.
Gotcha. Thank you. We don't live in silos, so whatever's happening in society is reflected in our schools and vice versa.
Yes, and so you expect for these kids to come in and ready to learn, they're not, but you have to learn how to deal with it. Yeah, I see it in the schools, I mean, I'm an ECE teacher.
Where are you a teacher?
I was at Dixie, I'm gonna be at Roosevelt Perry.
Okay, good, excellent.
And so, where you've read the psych report, and I'm just speaking about another teacher right now, and she knows what triggers this student. And I've watched her from last year to this year, and I see what she's doing.
Yeah.
She sets these kids off because she's wanting to build
Yeah.
up the data that they need to get these kids self-contained, because they don't wanna deal
Yeah.
with it.
Yeah.
You're an ECE teacher.
Yeah.
LBD, that's learning behavior disorder, we have to deal with it, you have to learn. I had them for hour and a half, she had them for a half an hour. A whole hour and a half that I had them, never set them off, because I know I'm not gonna be able to contain him or stand behind his chair or speak to him like this. You have to be calm, because when you do that, that sets him off.
you
That
control
goes-
your reactions is
That
number one
goes,
key.
that goes back, I think, to the culture and climate and the
Yes.
adult-centered versus
You also do
student
walk on
centered,
eggshells.
doing what's what the
Thank
adults
you.
want. So,
Yeah.
but kind
I
of
know.
building on what they were saying and going through with, you know, what the schools need, what the students need and things like that. In your role, even though it's interim, I know obviously if you end up being the one who gets it long-term, this answer to this would definitely be yes, but would you ever see the need in the 6 months to use the power that was granted last year by HB 184 as far as removing a principal if need be? Because I mean, and I'm gonna throw it straight out there. My son just graduated from Shawnee. He had 6 principals in the 4 years that he was there. The amount of well, yeah, he had a substitute English teacher his entire sophomore year. You know, I mean, it has been a train wreck. But the level of teachers that are fleeing every year, and we've had the same principal for 2 years. We should still not have this massive exodus of talent. I don't think there's going to be anybody left who's been there longer than 2 years.
Yeah.
Those kids, and they are kids in trauma. The kids live in Portland. They are high trauma. They need consistency. So is that something that, well, you got to wait till we get a long-term principle for that solution, or is this something that needs to be dealt with right now?
Let me say this, obviously Shawnee being a high school, I know more about high schools than anything else. So I am familiar with the struggles and the situation and have more of a historical
And you were there for a while
understanding.
too.
My first year, 1997, 98, I was at Shawnee. One of my best years as a coach was coaching the kids at Shawnee because they had such a bad experience, and I came in and all they wanted was to be coached.
Yeah.
All they wanted, and they all lived right around here. I mean, I'd pick them up and drive them home every night. And so, I mean, I know Keith looked very well. Talked to him since I got this position. I know Houston Barber very well. He was at Fern Creek when I was at J-Town. So, I mean, I know these people, so I have a better understanding of Shawnee than like Maupin and Crosby. Obviously, I followed the news, but I don't have a deep understanding of it right now. So right now, but it would be unfair of me to say, any singular situation that someone needs to come or go without having a clear understanding of it. So anytime, and I'll tell you this, the hardest thing in the world to do is fire somebody. I did it 5 weeks ago. Teaching was not for this person. And I'd done everything possible to help. And teachers were commenting on it, and a lot of issues with this person, but I felt like it was better for kids that this person has to be let go. Even knowing that it was the right decision, it is gut-wrenching and painful to tell somebody that you are no longer going to be employed here, especially since they have a kid and a wife and a family and all of these things, and had just bought a house.
Right.
So, when principals tell me, oh, I'd fire this person, I'd fire that person, I'm like, or anybody says that, I'm like, if it's easy, then you're not the right person for this job.
Right.
So it is gut-wrenching to do that and keeps you up at night. Having said that, my job is to make the best decision for what is right for a school. I will first make sure that the assistance needed has been given, that, has there been assistance, in what form? And same thing I would do with a teacher, that if we exhausted everything, and yes, at a certain point, you have to make that decision. Now, if that comes in the 6 months that I'm here, I would make that if it's the best decision. I would not, if it needs to be made for kids right now, then it would be made. But those things would have to happen
Right.
first.
I can respect that.
About, let me be clear about discipline, what I've learned and what has to happen in schools. Because when I first started as a principal, I was like the new sheriff in town, that I'm coming in and no one's doing this on my watch, and I've learned a lot in 10 years. And what I've learned about an academic climate is to only be worried about what matters in the classroom with an academic climate. Stop worrying about all the other things that go on. So I used to worry about how kids dress when they come to school. Don't care anymore. Now, I say that there has to be a level of appropriateness in a school.
Can't interfere with learning.
And so, it's got to be appropriate, and yes, there are some societal norms that we might all disagree with, especially with kids, but we have to agree that's not appropriate for school. But other than that, I could care less what a kid wears to school. I could care less whether they have a belt on or their shirt's tucked in, or if they have socks and shoes and anything like that. So essentially, you wear what you want to wear. I used to battle headphones, cell phones, all this other thing, and then I visited a school out in Portland about 5 years ago, and all the kids walked out of class and put their headphones on and talked on the phone, and I'm like, why in the world am I battling this so much? And so when I came to DOS, I said, we're going to have the same thing it would be at U of L. At U of L, kids walk out of a classroom, they probably put their headphones on, and they look at their cell phone, and they walk around
You kidding me? They
campus.
never take them off.
Yeah, when they come into class, their expectation is take them off. It's the same thing at DOS right now. Anywhere outside of a class, wear them as much as you want, talk on the phone as much as you want, text as much as you want. But when it comes time to walk in the class, it goes away, and you are expected to learn, be respectful. And so we focus on that and that alone. We don't take kids' cell phones from them. If they're the last thing I would ever do is take a kid's cell phone and confiscate it. Keep your cell phone. Now, there might be some other discipline involved. If you won't follow directions about put your cell phone away in the class, we're not going to take it from you. I mean, that is a poor kid. That is the most devastating thing. So if
And
it was
once you take it away from them,
what's that?
once you take it away from them and they escalate, you got nothing left.
That's right. And
You got,
my daughter, I fought the cell phone, but it's one of the best things. I can contact her when I need to, and if it was taken away, I might be very upset with her and punish her, but in the end, I would have the means to go get another one.
Mm-hmm.
And we have parents that won't, and so what I think on discipline is be very intense and focused about the things that matter. And what matters is being in the classroom, being respectful and respectful environment, obviously following directions and being engaged in the lesson, and quit worrying about anything else that matters. And that has had a huge effect on DOS.
What about bringing that up a level to not worrying about test scores and not worrying, if you do what's best for the kids and focusing on learning, won't test scores naturally follow? So
It's my belief, I've said that in front of the board, that if we do the right things in the classroom,
It'll
test
organically
scores
take
will
care of
follow.
itself.
It's authenticity.
Now, we've got to define what the right thing in the classroom
Yes.
is. And so for some teachers might disagree with that, but there has to be a common belief amongst the entire district about this is the right thing in the classroom, this is the way we teach, this is the way instruction goes. Principals, you tailor that to meet your needs of your school, so it's a loose and tight, some things are gonna be very tight, some things will be loose depending on the school, and you have the ability to do that, but we're all about this. If we do that, then test scores will follow. I
Right.
believe that, and I have to, and it's always worked out for me to this point, so.
So you're not, I can tell automatically, you're not somebody who enjoys micromanaging people.
Well, no, I'm not.
Unless you have to.
But there's a balance
Yes.
between, over here is micromanage, like I'm telling everybody what to do. Over here is complete freedom to do whatever the heck you wanna do, right? And there's a sweet spot in the
Yes.
middle, that I hire good people to do good work. Like I have academies at Doss, and each assistant principal is an academy of principal, and you run that school. But at the same time, I know what's going on all the
Right.
time. And I can't just wash my hands and say, you're qualified, go do it. I have to be responsible for the decisions that are made all
Right.
the time. So, no, definitely no to micromanaging, but yes, always knowing what's happening and being a part of critical decisions.
Right.
Do you mind if I take a couple of pictures?
No, go ahead.
Just want to document that we actually met. But keep talking. I'm
So, I mean, I want to say on, like, the three schools, like I said before, we talked about Shawnee. I'm going to say this about Shawnee. This is my belief, and it's been for several years. We've got to do something different with Shawnee. We can't keep doing the same thing and expect different results. And I don't know what different is right now.
I expect it's gonna be the one right above your notepad.
Charter schools.
That's
it's,
what I expect, that they've done it on purpose to do that.
It could be, but I mean, whether if that's it or something different, we've got to find an answer that makes Shawnee viable and successful.
Yes.
So, and I'm not so sure the right answer. In 1997, when I was there, we were talking about how to get kids from the East End to come down to the aerospace magnet. And it's still, the numbers have been very small. So I know your son was very successful with it.
Yeah.
My
And
son
I'm not-
graduated from it, he's going to Western Michigan in the fall.
And so,
But they've put so many hurdles and obstacles, like we tried to help them recruit and bring students in, and it was almost willful incompetence, which is
Yeah.
actually one of my cards here.
Right, we even said, why not take the resides kids who qualify for that, send their families a letter and say, your child qualifies to be in this program, because then if you protect them with the magnet, if they move 2 streets over and it changed their resides, they don't
Yeah.
have to shift high schools, like, they don't take advantage of it.
yeah.
And they never actually, we had ideas 2 and 3 years ago about ways we could improve the school, and they didn't care to hear what we had to say.
So I mean, that gets into, I'm not saying aerospace is not right, but it's just, we have to, they explored the 6 through 12, but I don't think they ever really invested in 6 through 12 the way it was supposed to be 6 through 12.
Well, she's got a just graduated 7th grader going to 8th grade
So
there.
I've been down there, well, it will be my 3rd year.
Yeah,
So I've got a middle schooler that will be in 8th grade, and he did 6 and 7 through there. And then my daughter was at Atherton freshman year, and she's down there at Shawnee and has completely, absolutely turned her life around.
But that Shawnee
being
is
at
a tale
Shawnee.
of 2 schools. The middle school is a completely polar opposite.
yeah.
It's like a third world country down there. You have
It's because I trained the assistant principal that's
Yeah,
down
she's
there.
pretty awesome.
That's, I trained her.
Yeah, no, Dr. Jack, yeah.
She
it's-
would probably say she trained me, but you don't listen to that.
But and it goes back to that principals and also that concept that
Climate.
teachers don't quit schools, they quit principals.
Yeah, that's right.
And we have a huge flux of people leaving this year. So again,
So I mean, I think that's a long term, but I think there has to be a real team to explore, with
that
a
goes
lot
with
of people.
SB1. Do
Mhm.
you know about what's coming with
Mhm.
SB1? So is there a plan for schools like Shawnee and Maupin? Because I know that there are all these priority schools that now become transitional schools, there has to be one of 3 models adopted. Are you guys working on what's gonna happen?
So I'm not gonna say no, I'm not yet.
Okay.
I met with Marco Munoz the other day, and he kind of explained the situation on that, and we said we're meeting later this week to really talk about it. but I'd be lying if I said I have an answer for you right
Okay.
now.
But it's at least being addressed. It's-
Exactly.
people are
Well, the
aware of
problem
it.
is it's gonna go from about 18 schools that we have and about another 10 that they're considered transformation zone schools that are close to about 45 schools because of this model. And so now we're looking at 45 that could be less sanctions, so to speak, but some concerns about how we are going to help and assist. I mean, I've got some ideas. I believe it needs to be one assistant superintendent. Now, it can't be 45 schools, but one assistant superintendent needs to be over the priority schools, so to speak.
Kind of like one is over the alternative schools.
Correct, but it needs to be someone who knows priority very well and is very intense about being in the schools, that is almost like their own little district, that this person is an advocate, but holding them accountable.
How does that differ from what Marco's doing currently?
Because Marco is not in an evaluation capacity. So he does not evaluate the principals. And so Marco, I see as more as kind of a liaison between the state and the district and kind of leads it. But when I say an assistant superintendent, meaning
Evaluating.
get your ass in gear or we got issues here. And Marco does not have that kind of capability right now.
I like
So
it
are
that
you
way.
saying
I
add?
do too.
are-
He's was on my dissertation team,
So in your dream world, would that be adding a seventh assistant superintendent or taking one that's already there and making that their role?
It's probably restructuring the whole thing to end up being possibly one less.
Go back to the way it was before.
I mean, I don't have enough, I hate to say definitively what that will be, and don't hold me to that at this point. I mean, that would probably be a non-interim type decision, but I think it would probably go back to high,
Grade level.
middle, elementary, special school, and priority school.
That makes more
Okay,
sense.
that makes sense.
So I mean, you would be looking at 5 instead of
Mhm.
6, but I think it would make more sense than to have it that way, where someone's an expert on high school.
I agree
Someone's
with
an
that.
expert on, the original idea of this was achievement area was all the schools that are close by will collab, it never worked out that way. And so what we've ended up with, Glen Beatty has Dixie Highway and Eastern High School and Crosby. I mean, come on, like, could you be farther apart in this community? And Shawnee now has ended up with Region 5, who is special schools. I mean, it just is,
Well, we were told that was because that happened when Amy Dennis left and there was an interim until they filled her position, and because Dr. Zeitz had been Miss Benbow's principal mentor, Hargens wanted to pair her with it because there was no area superintendent because the school was on fire. And somebody needed to be in there to do something, and it just kind of continued. And
Well-
we've asked, is this official? No, we're not in area 5, you're in area 2.
Are you setting us up for alternative
Are you
school?
setting us up for alternative school?
well,
So, yeah.
that is communication issue, that if
Yes.
they felt like Shawnee and Benita would have been best going to Region 5, then say it.
Right,
This is best for
exactly.
Shawnee, it's
Say
not
it.
gonna be an alternative, but we think this is what is needed.
But it was
But
not.
where this got messed up was when Houston Barber got the opportunity to say what area he wanted to go to, and that was a condition of his
Right.
going down there was, I don't wanna be with Lynn Weed, I wanna be with Amy Dennis.
Well, and that was from the
Which-
parents too, because Lynn
Yeah.
Weed had a very contentious relationship
That's
with the
fine,
parents.
that's fine, then then that is an employee problem
Right.
with Lynn Wheat, and should not be, let's shuffle around
Right.
because we have an employee
Right,
problem.
right.
Right.
Although I would argue that a lot of these problems could actually be based on a directive as to what they have been told their job is to do. And I don't even know that Ms. Benbow is necessarily that incompetent. I would like to know what her instructions are,
Mhm.
because we're not convinced that her job is to save that school.
Mhm.
So maybe she's a stellar performer at what she's been assigned to do, but it's not helping the situation
Yeah.
of Shawnee.
I mean, I don't know enough, like I said, I haven't been in the school, I read what anybody else reads.
But
I'd
I
say
like,
the same is true for
now,
the
so
principal.
if, in your vision of having the 5 where you have the elementary, the middle, high, which I love that concept, as a transition school, if a transition school transitions out, it would then shift to the new
Right
district?
to their,
Okay,
back to where they were.
okay.
So if they're out, like Valley High School, they would go from being in that priority district then to moving into the high school district.
Okay.
That's just at this point, now, I might change my mind as I dig into this more and say, but I don't believe that the way we have it now is working.
I would agree
So
with that,
when
yes.
it was high school, we had an assistant super, and there were several principals that were removed because of the situation in their schools, and I think at certain times, we have to save principals, they're drowning, we need to do something different, and that happened. That hasn't happened in this district, other than priority removals, in a long time.
Yeah.
There's been a cause or two, meaning they did something, but not because this isn't working at your school.
I would like to know, and this may be part of a bigger set of questions here, like pertaining to charter schools and busing when it comes to the neighborhood schools bill. But what are we doing to educate and inform our legislators about the handcuffs and obstacles that they place on us in order
Yeah.
to perform our jobs the way we need to? Because I think a lot of what's happening is misinformation or misunderstanding, and nobody really carrying the water for us, nobody fighting our fights. The Shawnee is a priority school, but we've met all of our AMOs for the last 3 or 4 years. The only one we can't meet is that silly bottom 5%. We can't get out of the bottom 5%. Do they thoroughly understand what that bottom 5% means? We could all be straight A students and there would still be a bottom 5%. So who's taking that simple message to our legislators to simply say, strike that, and we would suddenly be out of priority status? Tiffany is. Actually, she's got a different one, but yes.
Yeah, well,
Who's
right-
doing that? This is
Yeah.
very important.
right
and it's
before
not
I came
easy
here, I
done.
met with 2 legislators, and I've got about 7 more this week. So I think that's incumbent on the superintendent, not anyone else, but to be very clear and direct about what needs to happen now. You know, the one I met with today came back at me and said, well, I'm gonna tell you, my belief and my constituents' belief is that it's just a bunch of fat cats sitting over there doing this and that and not caring and you know. And
Public perception.
and
That's
so,
the
that's
first
right.
one.
And so, some of that I said we have to take ownership of. Some of that is not true,
Nope.
you know, and I said, so, all right, that we got into the neighborhood schools bill, and I said, let me tell you, I believe in school choice because I think it makes a good principle. You know, I have to respond, and so what principals have to understand, school safety and climate is the #1 issue for parents. Without a doubt, the #1 issue that parents are concerned about, my daughter I'm concerned about, like what's the climate like in the school? That's what parents are concerned about. And so school choice makes you address those issues.
Halt on that
Okay.
thought. That I heard an NPR story that said something similar to me, and it's like, so those who are not happy with school climate, bullying behavior, whatever, they have the choice to move to another school. Well, that just leaves the school with more bullies and less kids that.
Well, I agree,
So like, no, that should be unacceptable, period, end of story. Being able to move simply because you want a safer school is objectionable. I have a huge objection with parents thinking, well, that's not okay for my kid, but it's
Screw
still
you, I
okay for
got mine.
yours.
Well-
No,
There is a balance, so here is what I would say to that. We have I think there's too much choice, I think there needs to be limited choice, where parents have, and I'll say like, okay, South End, if I live in the South End of Louisville, and I'm just gonna go high schools right now, cause that's what I know. I know elementary is much more contentious on the school choice. But I'm like, you have the choice of PRP, Doss, Valley, Western, Iroquois, Fairdale, you have Butler, Manual, Brown, and I'm like, you've got 9 schools to choose from, essentially. Like, I get it if there is a district-wide magnet, like if we wanted to make Shawnee Aerospace a district-wide and we want to make a 10th, but when we have kids living near Doss getting on a JCPS school bus and going to Ballard, we have issues there. And so I think that, yes, choice, and this is what we have to have choice so that schools, I think it forces us to do a better job, but there's gotta be limited choice, and yes, that requires
Gotta
just
be
packing up and
manageable.
leaving, and yeah, managed choice. And so getting to the heart of it is fixing that problem with the principal and their leadership and not saying, well, it's okay to leave.
right.
And also support, again, they need support to be
Yep.
able to do their
Right.
jobs, and
That's-
then you can
yeah.
combat them.
So Maupin and Crosby, I obviously follow the stories online, and I know each is different in their problem. kind of.
Maupin just lost its SBDM based on fraud. There was fraud that took place with what happened with Maupin.
Really? See, I didn't know that, so I'm not real familiar, so.
What was the fraud?
Multiple examples of them making decisions without running them past SBDM.
And the SBDM basically was just there sitting.
Yeah,
An
They were just
audit,
there.
an audit that came in between a transition of assistant superintendents where no one actually informed the auditors that this is a school of innovation and we just started this year with this plan. Yes, we told them the scores were gonna go down before they go up. This was intentional. We warned you. And then they came and pulled the plug on the
Yeah.
program after just 1 year of test scores.
yeah. So this is what I think on any program, not any program, but most programs can be successful at a school if there's support from central office, if the leadership of the school is 100% behind it, if every person is trained, and our problem in most schools, we say, well, we're gonna do this, and this, and this, and this, and this, and none of them are done very well. And so if we do 2 or 3 things at a school, and this is going to be the big one, and everyone's gonna do it in every class, and everyone's gonna be trained on it, and if I ask a custodian, what is this school about, they would be able to say what this school is about. Someone working in nutrition services would be able to say what this school is about, and we are going to monitor it, not necessarily just with test scores. How are we implementing it? Do we have a plan to go to year 2 and year 3? Then just about any sound research-based program will be successful in a school. But usually what happens is, we tried it, that didn't work very well, let's go on to something else.
Well,
Now, I can't speak to the X's and O's of that, I guess.
I mean, that was, I was gonna say, that was my major issue, is that this program, I can't see how JCPS allowed a program to come in, have it just total hot mess, wait until year 2, going into year 2 to say, oh my God, it's just such a, a hot mess, and then not really tell us what the plan was.
Yeah.
Like, exactly, if first of all, if everybody that was in the building was gung-ho about it, we would not have been having to go in front of the board and cry
Right.
and have issues. Number 2, if the administration and leadership was 100 behind it, they would have had a plan in place that said, if this happens, this is gonna happen. What we failed to do at Maupin is that there was no contingencies, there was no risk management done, there was no project management done. Basically, they threw a program inside of a school and said, it's gonna be great, and then when it wasn't
Wing
great,
it.
they
It was
blamed
just throw it on the wall and
everybody
see what
else
sticks.
Made
except
Maupin
for
great again.
themselves. And so, for me,
And they had
as-
no parent communication,
Yeah,
so
no
none of the resides parents even knew what was going on. So when they're like, why
They-
does my kid not have
there was
homework?
reside parents who didn't even know their school was a catapult model. They didn't even know that their kids was learning a totally different setup. So for me as a JCP, because I have a 1-year-old, so you have me for a really, really long time, I expect for there to be processes and procedures that make sense. And when things like this happen, that you are very, very transparent with us as a parent, because I would have had a totally different thought process of JCPS. If in September I was told the school's getting ready to go to priority, by the end of this year you're going to be having to find another school,
Yeah.
I would have been fine with that, because I would have been like, okay, well, that's what happens, okay. But that's not what they did.
I wouldn't have been fine with that because.
But at least I knew.
But at least that gives her the
But
opportunity.
I wasn't fine with it for a deeper reason. It seems like they're always walking a tightrope. It's like everything is always a surprise to them.
Yeah.
How do
Well-
you not get in front of problems?
And that goes back to
Circle
his
the
con-
And
that
then
goes back to his
It wouldn't have
concept
even been an
of
issue.
nobody makes a decision until you have to.
Yes.
Yeah.
We had with what was that,
That's
Karen?
leadership.
There's a lot
And
of
they don't even think about it. They just knee-jerk
there's
reaction.
a lot of
It's
flat
tricky.
squirrels on the highway because they couldn't make up their mind, and that's what we are. We are flat squirrels.
They were playing not to lose and not playing to
So-
So what I would think I would say, if it had been my decision without knowing a whole lot, and if I felt there was problems with the program itself, the better answer probably would have been in May to say, or whenever the vote was, April or May, I can't remember which one it was to say, we haven't had success with this at this point for the following reasons. We need to see the following things happen in 12 months, or we're gonna have to look for a different model. In the meantime, here's what we're going to do
That's all I asked. I wrote them
Yeah.
repeatedly, 1,000 times, and said,
Well, that
if you
needed to
give me
come from the
12 more,
superintendent.
give me
It
12
should have
more
never
months.
gone back before the board for a
Yeah.
vote, because the board approved it 2 years ago. Why are they having to reapprove?
So, but it
They
comes
never
back,
implemented what
so
they
it's your
approved.
vision in the 6 month is you are looking to be more of a proactive than a reactive leader.
Well, yes, I mean, there's going to be, there's not a lot of great systems about what's coming up and what,
That wouldn't be hard.
you know, what, it was pretty funny. Brent McKim texted me during the board meeting and said, you could crawl over the bar that's set for you. I said, Brent, I've made a career over following the right people, my friend. So, you know, I mean, just
hard to do worse.
just systems and, you know, that says, all right, this is coming up in November. So if we're gonna do work sessions on it, the work session should be about 2 months before that, in like September. And then, so if we're doing a decision on an elementary school, then 4 or 5 months before, if it's like that, we should do a work session, so everyone knows, all right, they're discussing this, and we need to
That's
see
not what was
this
happening. They
improvement.
would,
So-
they would
So-
have a work session and then vote on
Yeah,
it,
vote on
like,
it on the
like
Sunday morning.
literally the next.
So,
They had a resolution that was, had its first reading, waived second reading, and approved in 5 minutes.
yeah.
It's like,
But that sounds like that's not something that you would plan to do. That's not gonna be your
No, I mean,
style.
I'm gonna say, I haven't been in the job long enough to say that some emergency situations
Correct.
won't
Yeah.
come up that you have to deal with. But if it's happening time after time after time, there's a problem. I mean, there's talk right now of that, you know, there's kind of this in-between right now of who's making the decisions here, where technically I'm not allowed to make the decisions until July 2nd. And
Right.
some things that are returning to me and other things they're not, but there's talk right now of moving students for the first of school. They talked about it at the board, had a couple speakers about moving some kids to another location. And my question was, why are we talking about this on June 1st for an August 16th? Like, that is ridiculous to me, you know, and
How can you make a sound decision?
And it's
So-
disrespectful to the kids and their
you know, and
families.
so, but you know, they answer, well, it's only 25 kids, and I'm like, but it's 25 kids, and there's a lot of other factors that go in, like now they're going into a new building, and, I mean, it's just, you know, and I don't know
it's
what.
25 kids, but it probably impacts 250
Yeah,
people.
Well, it's.
And they're gonna, it only takes 5 of them to raise a seat.
So, I mean, it's just one of those things that, yes, we have to make decisions. I mean, we're gonna have to make some tough decisions about facilities in this district. Like, we need some tough decisions, and whether that means closing a school or building another school for a place like Crosby. Like, do we need another middle school out in that end of, so I mean, tough decisions that are gonna require courage, but it has to be done well in advance with plenty of time for discussion. And eventually, you're gonna have people on both sides who agree and disagree. You're gonna have to make a decision and say, this is where we're going.
Well, you
Can
ma-
I- I'm sorry, can I ask a quick question? Because that has to do with student assignment, I don't know if that was.
Yes.
talked
I
about.
was gonna actually ask him to talk about
Yeah.
that next, so yes, go ahead and ask your question.
Is there any way, you know, it needs to be revised.
It does.
To make sense, because when you have a family living over here, going to, let's say, oh gosh, I only have, okay, Southern, and over here, they're going to Moore, I'm like, oh, you know, like, why?
Well, the boundary lines have to be somewhere,
Yes.
but.
It
But
just
why is the
doesn't make
burden of diversity on one segment of our population? That's a question I'd like to ask.
Okay.
What do
Yeah.
you think? Is that a good question?
I mean, I don't know if I have an answer for you on that. I mean, I'm in a school right now with about 68% minority. So it's not near some of our elementary schools. And that's because in the south end, we have some neighborhoods around us that are, you know, predominantly white students. Having said that, they're all very poor and all have the same struggles. I don't know, I wish I could say I had an answer for you right now, like how that is fixed. I mean, that's such a big issue about how we fix a situation where a school, you know, like Maupin is not, what percentage is minority?
Oh, they probably still have like 90%.
So not like, how do we get that to,
Oh, let's put in a program that'll attract people from all,
Yeah.
oh, wait, we did.
Yeah, no, we didn't. We just put the name on the
We
school.
pretended
We didn't
to.
mark it because and I asked. I said, could we just let me market the school? I will market it. I
This
will
is
go
the same
around and
challenge
put
we
stuff.
had.
Yeah.
And they were just like, what do you mean? I don't know. The school's great.
We
It's
can
fine.
increase
Everything's good.
diversity if
Well,
they would market
yeah.
the schools.
Well, part of that is it's incumbent on principals to do that. Principals are not trained to do that, and they're drowning, and meanwhile, you're supposed to be marketing, and the principals are like, I'm just trying to get the kids in the classroom right now. And so,
That goes back to
That's-
support.
that's
Well,
training
here's
and
something,
support
just
and-
building off of that too. How do we, because we went through GCPS and there was that concept of the fortress school. I don't know if you've heard that whole.
I have not.
Okay, so there's like different types. There's the open school where it's like parents and
Welcoming.
everybody, they collaborate. And then you got the fortress school where it's like, we don't want you in here until
Yeah.
we need you for something. JCPS as a district is very much a fortress district when it comes to parents. It's, this is your box. We need you for PTA fundraising stuff, and that is it. Whereas we've got parents like, she's a marketing, she went in and begged, I will do your website for free, I will do whatever you want for free, and it's, no, we don't want you in here for that. So that's one of the things I would love to see, even though, my oldest just graduated, my youngest is in a private school. I hope to bring him back into JCPS, but there's no way in hell I'm doing that right now. But it's that collaboration between, why are parents seen as the enemy?
Well, I think all too often, it is a principal who is drowning, who does not know how to deal or handle, like, where do I plug in parents here? It's
Right.
the same with business community, like, a business partner will call and say, I wanna help the school, I wanna do this, how can I help? And what we have is a principal, once again, who is struggling to make this work, and struggling to get kids to behave, and trying to break up fights, and trying to get kids in, and they don't know what to do. And so that's where central office, we have to do a better job of helping principals
So
to be
maybe-
able to plug in
I-
parents.
then-
Listen, maybe
It's not
add
even
a
that. You
sister
have principals in not
Well,
so
hold on,
challenging
hold on.
schools
So
that are
maybe-
doing that.
So maybe as a solution to that, to maybe add to your list of things to look at, is
Mhm.
maybe some kind of system set up for how to get parents involved beyond just the PTA. What is some way that you can,
And open house.
basically a drag and drop,
Yep.
if you have business people calling, these are some places you can plug them in. If you have parents wanting to help, these are the avenues that are approved, that if a parent wants to help develop a website, yes, they can.
Volunteer.
If a parent wants to help do this, this is how you can help. Like, that would be a system that's completely
I
missing.
mean, I'll be honest, and so I bring a different perspective, I'm a parent too. My daughter's just finished the 6th grade. We had an incredible elementary school experience. Middle school has been so-so far. And she loves it, so I'm happy if she loves it. I haven't been blown away, but she loves it. But I don't feel like we have been made a part of the school, and I know it gets, as you get higher from and elementary does a lot of fun things with parents, and you can do that, and then middle is more, and then high school. But I have not been felt a part of like the school
Correct.
community.
They don't.
So,
That's
you
a
know,
middle
when I
school
came,
thing.
when I
I
came
was
to open
told,
house,
yeah.
like, I felt like I was bugging them to like sit down and talk, well, she's fine, she's got all A's. Well, that's not what I'm asking you. I'm
Right.
asking what, and so, and then the only other, like I went to her dance recital and then her choir thing in the spring, and that was nice, but it felt like we were just stopping by. So I don't feel like we're in her elementary school, the principal, hey Jessica, how are you, Marty? I mean, it was that type of feel about it.
Yes.
And so, I experienced that too. So I'm different than most people that, that are in this position, because I understand that and know exactly what you're talking about.
It does. In elementary school, it's a very much come in,
Yeah.
and when you get middle school, I was
Drop them at the
literally
door.
told when my son went to Newburgh, we don't need parents like you in here busybodying, you need to get out. And it was like,
Who was the principal then?
oh, it was the one before the one that's there now.
Okay,
It was
that's
a
what my
white
son's
hall.
got. I was like, it's Miss Adele now, I didn't know who
No,
was
it's not
there.
her, it's before that.
She's good.
That's what my son got.
Yeah, she's
So,
there, that was,
and
yeah.
you may not know this about me, but I don't take no for an answer.
I figured, I kind of picked that up, it's not a surprise to me.
But when we didn't have a principal at all, it was really hard for me to get in and help them with their marketing, but I did it anyway. I built them a website, I started a weekly email newsletter, a printed newsletter. We started some recruiting things, and then once we had, but then then when Dr. Barber got there, it took me a while, but I gained his trust, and he started giving more and more responsibility to me. But then when he left, starting all over, having to build that. So the turnover in these priority schools is hugely detrimental to any of that momentum that you're building. So, anyway.
That comes to a lot to support, so,
Mhm.
I'll be completely honest with you that this job I have is obviously very difficult, but in a way, I'm not, like, being a principal of a priority school is tough and hard, and, I mean, it's exhausting, and the pressure you take home with you every night is incredible. You know, that whole whatever happened today at school, a good principal owns that, and
Yeah.
like, how am I gonna fix that? And if it was a fight, if it was a teacher doing something they shouldn't have, if it was
Probably all of the above in the
whatever
same
it
day.
is,
Yep.
you take that home with you, and I say it's the only job in the world. It really is. One day you feel like, I've got this, I'm doing pretty good, like I saw good classes today, good day, feel good about the job I'm doing, and 24 hours later, you can feel like the worst principal in the world, depending on what happened that day. And there's not many jobs like that, the swings. And so for many folks, it's difficult to keep doing that. And so, you know, the support has to be there. And so, on the other side of it, and you all experience kind of the priority side of it, we have the other side, which is some people that say at a school like Ballard, for instance, which is 35-40% free and reduced lunch. Yeah, they have all those advanced kids, but they still have 700 Title I kids who come from this neighborhood down here that are shipped out there, and they're not getting, and I experienced
And
that
they're
at
not
JTAP.
authentically integrated, so
They're
the
not,
dilution of
and the school is not getting the
impacts,
funding, and
right?
so they're upset that, you know, I've got these 700 kids coming from the
Aren't
same
getting Title I
neighborhood that the
supports.
kids go to Doss or Shawnee, the same problems, the same everything, and we have none of the supports that those schools have. So it's
In
tough
theory,
right now.
the saturation level, and you've heard Marco talk about this, in theory, in a school like Ballard, having 100 engaged families to offset the 700, kids that are coming in that are Title I without the supports, having a PTA in place, having parents in the building, et cetera, help minimize that saturation level.
Yep.
Whereas at Shawnee, it was really literally 4 of us
Yep.
trying to save a sinking ship when it came to getting parents involved.
But I had the conjecture, remember our meeting with Tom Hudson? So Tom Hudson argued that, about that, he made the saturation argument. And what I said is, the school, I believe Doss is where you were, I think I used your school as an example. I said, Doss may have a practical experience in dealing with a more challenging student mix. And so let's say 70% of their kids would, and I advocate what's called student mix because it's a member mix, customer mix, analytics mentality. But they may have a 70% challenging student mix, but they've had a lot of exposure to it. So they may be doing better on their 70% than manual on their 2%. So the 2%, those 2% challenging mixed students at manual are probably worse off than the 70% at DOS.
Yeah.
But you would never know that with the numbers.
Yeah.
Because they hide, that's the smoke screen. That's why I was saying their analytics
hide
is not very good. They don't ask the fundamental question, why? If they did that, it would
Yeah.
speak volumes.
But if Ballard isn't truly integrated, then you're
Yeah.
not getting that benefit because you've got kids in separate hallways
Yep.
instead of truly.
Yeah. I think that when it comes to the resources, it's just surprising to me because my youngest daughter went to Brandeis for preschool. The interaction that I received from Brandeis, a school literally a stone throw away from Maupin, was a totally different thing that was happening at Maupin. But I would have expected the priority school to give us so much more interaction, we would have more resources, but we didn't. Brandeis seemed to get more resources, and they were really, asking for parents to come in, and they were always giving, that lady will bombard you with so much information about what's going on in that school that you just feel like you want to say, stop.
It's priority only in name.
Yeah, but Maupin,
So-
I would beg them, like, can you please send a one call?
Yeah.
Well, okay, we'll send
So-
it.
And I think that comes back to turnover, and you're losing, we lost institutional knowledge, you don't know why, and that's why I'm really thankful they put you in the position, because we talked to the board members about that, you need somebody, our new superintendent needs to be somebody who knows JCPS, because our last 3 have been out of state.
Yep.
JCPS does some weird things, but there are reasons why we do them that way. So losing, and that's happened with the priorities, you constantly have all this turnover and you lose all that institutional
Turnover.
knowledge.
Turnover is a disaster for whether it's teacher, whether it's principal, whatever it is a disaster for gaining any momentum. Now, sometimes it needs to happen,
Right,
but multiple turnover is not good.
right.
You know, the frustrating part on parent, and I just say this from a principal, you know, that was one of the things I really focused on this year, was let's have a culture where, and we did parent newsletter and one calls. We, you know, opened up the year with a dinner where we had used some Title I funds, Mark's Feed Store, and bring come here, we're gonna have a dinner for you. And it wasn't a disaster by any means, but it was much less than what we expected. You know, and then that becomes, you know, just a challenge to deal with. So, you know, what I always believe in, it's a philosophy of mine, is that you have to do everything you can to get parents involved, but then not make it excuse for the staff. So we have things at DOS, what we call TBUs. So I call them true but useless. So if a parent, or excuse me, if a teacher says, well, I can't get a hold of any of the parents, I'll say TBU. What do you mean, true but useless? Doesn't help us any. I mean, it's
Right.
a fact.
These
Or-
parents are
I
not
love that.
involved,
I
not
love
the kids'
that.
fault, we still gotta help the kids.
Middle school did not prepare them the way they should when they arrived at DOS. Well,
True but
maybe
useless.
true,
I
but
love
useless.
that.
I mean, they're here right now, so they get tired of me saying TBUs
I
all
love
the time.
that.
U of L, that was the argument she said when I said, you know, a lot of these kids aren't prepared for what we're teaching them. She's like, well, that's a problem with the grade school. So I was like, that's true, but that doesn't change the fact that they're in our class. What do we do?
Yeah.
Right.
That would be useful.
That's
So
right.
I wish
So-
I had TV, I
So
would use that.
here's a question that I have, you know, if you've got 6, potentially 9 months, assuming you don't get the long-term job, which I'm assuming you're going to try for that. I know you've already addressed, and you said school culture and climate and district culture and climate is like your top priority. What would you say your next 2 top priorities that you, I mean, because obviously you can't fix everything in 6 months.
Yeah.
That's just not a reasonable
Yeah.
expectation.
Well, I think definitely oversight of schools.
Okay.
Support of schools and oversight, and that gets into
Building the systems and
building
things
the
like that.
systems. I mean, and having support for them, but also oversight. And that means identifying schools that are not doing well, and figuring out ways to improve them. Definitely improving systems is going to be a huge one for me. Systems of how board meetings work, systems of how we talk about issues. I mean, I can get that done immediately, is we have to get out of the weeds. And, I mean, there has to be strategy too to board meetings. So like I'll be honest, I've been saying this for a long time, of sometimes we just need some calm waters a little bit in JCPS. And it was like, she was like searching for issues to dig up and get everybody upset about. And yeah, we've got to put hot button issues on board meetings, but they need to be strategically placed, not 3 on one board meeting where half of the city shows up pissed off.
And y'all are still there till 2
And
o'clock
I'm
in the
like,
morning.
what in the world? Who would think that doing the code of conduct changes and no salary increase for teachers would be a good decision to put on the same board?
I thought this, I was like, you think they would have dawned on them?
Thought that, like, that's why I believe that's what it is. Like, when somebody
Willful
not have said, no, wait a
incompetence.
minute. Okay, we're gonna make it look like whether it was or wasn't reducing the discipline of students, and you're not gonna get paid more on the same. I'm like, grief. I'm like,
The meetings will continue until morale improves.
I think a huge thing that can be done is systems, get the board focused on the issues that matter, get information in a timely manner where it's not rushed and last minute decisions, and I mean, those are things that can happen that will have a very positive effect
Absolutely.
on schools.
Because that's perception.
And
Yeah.
it'll change trust, and the
Yeah,
board
that's
will love
right.
you
Yep,
again, and
everything.
I I just ask, just going through the mopping because that's all I know, is that anytime you guys are gonna have a board meeting and you're gonna bring something, can you bring people from your organization that is on both sides?
Yes.
And not just have somebody get up there and
Yeah.
tell
Oh,
us
what
all
an
the great
idea.
things about something and not tell us about what the risks are gonna be if we're ever able to do this.
So you mean the people from the board that are sitting at the
Yes.
table to?
Like that to me, and then to have
Make
a
it
board
feel
member
honest.
say, well, you know what, you guys said to do it this way, and you guys are the experts, so that's the way I'm gonna vote. I literally wanted to
Well-
take a shoe and say, well, then what's the point of having you there?
Well, and we've
You're
even
supposed to
had,
be our person to say what happens. You're supposed to be our community person to say, no, that
Or
doesn't
give
make
people
sense.
time, like
So
we get our
please.
3 minutes and we're having to rush and we don't
And
get
we're not
Q&A.
experts. We're not educator experts. We're parents. My degree is in project management. I have no clue what you got. So for you to even use me as your, I mean, it's just crazy. So please, in board meetings, can we have 2 people that work with the district that may have a different opinion and come with the same facts, so that way the people that are on the board
Yep.
can actually make a justified
You
decision
need
instead of a
critical
one-sided
friends.
decision, because that to me was the worst thing that JCPS ever did, was to
Well-
show me that they have a willful
Oh,
incompetence
so-
because they don't wanna know.
So let me say this. The decision probably should be made prior to the board meeting. No board member should be going into a meeting thinking, I wonder what I'm going to vote on here. And so there should be, but having said that, there needs to be, the conversation and the discussion should probably be in board meetings prior to it and work sessions prior to it, where all of those things are
Community
discussed
forums.
and taught in community forums and parents. But I mean, usually when a board member gets there, if they're kind of, oh, I don't know what I'm gonna do, and it's the night of the vote, it's probably not vetted out very well. And so all of that stuff should have happened before, where the good and the bad and the more time to talk should be done at school meetings, board work sessions, all of those things. Then that actual meeting doesn't last 5 hours.
Yes.
And really, speakers in the old days, and everyone wants to make fun of that JCPS used to be terrible. And I'm not saying everything was perfect 7, 8 years ago. We had a lot of things, but I know as a principal, when I was the first, and it only happened to me once, but 2 or 3 years into we had a bus accident at J-Town. It was my fault. Like, it was a minor fender bender, and they came and picked the kids up, and they went, and I learned from this, we did not call every parent on the bus and say your child was in a fender bender today. Nobody was injured. They came in and went to class, and I just thought everything was fine. Then I thought, well, I guess if my child was in an accident, I would want to be notified that they were in an
I want
accident.
to hear it from the kid.
And so I was like, that was a mistake, and that's what you learn as a principal. So I put in a system to say, when this happens, okay, we first print off the bus list, we divide the names by 5. I give each clerk 5 names and some assistant principals if I need to. Call the parent, let them know this is what happened, they're fine, call us if you have, and call me or if you have any further, at least we've informed you. A parent signed up to speak at the next board meeting about this. I was contacted by the high school liaison who said, Marty, just wanted to let you know you have a parent who is coming to speak about, so just wanted to let you know you might want to at least talk to her. So I said, I'll give her a call. So I called the parent, and she said, yeah, I think I should have been called. I was, let her vent. And I said, you're right. I'm sorry. I made a mistake. I've learned it won't happen again. Here's the system I put in place. And she said,
Okay.
Oh.
okay. So she said, do I need to come speak tonight? And I said, well, you can if you would like. I'm not saying not to speak, but I just wanted to tell you what I've done. And she said, well, I don't need to come speak now. And I said, okay. But I said, I'm not saying not to come speak. I just wanted to apologize because it was my fault. It was a bad move on my part. And I learned, so we're going to fix it. And
That's so refreshing.
it was like, okay. And so we and that happened all the time. Like, someone has signed up to speak. Don't try to convince them not to speak, but maybe you can address the issue.
Own it.
And so
Don't
that this
pretend
parent
like it's
doesn't
their
have to,
fault.
doesn't have to come sit there for
Or they're
4
crazy.
Well,
hours.
really, I will tell you this as a parent, and you're a parent too, but anytime I have ever gone before the board meeting, it's not because I want to bitch, it's because I want my, it to be addressed,
Yeah.
yeah. Just say, I screwed up, this is what I'm gonna do.
You're
Great.
imagining it.
Thank you.
It's your fault
Right.
and you're crazy and
It,
you're
it
alone.
feels like gaslighting.
That's what they
I mean,
tell you.
Gaslighting is a
Everything
big
can't be
issue.
fixed
Yes.
that easy.
But a
you know,
lot of it,
but-
80% of it
You
probably
have to
could.
acknowledge the problem in
Yeah,
order to
that's
fix it,
right.
and they
You can't face what you
never,
can't fix.
never acknowledge
Well,
the
you would be
problem.
surprised how many times I've told parents, you're right, it was a mistake, either me or teacher shouldn't have done that, or you're right, it's a mistake, I apologize for that happening. And usually it's like, like, where do I go from here? I'm like,
Well,
it's
and
a
I
mistake, if I
also-
could take it back, I would.
I think there's
I've never
an issue, and this
I've
goes back
never
with
experienced that what you just said.
I think there's an issue with that within JCPS is there, especially, when, teachers get so run down and administrators get so run down, is they're forgetting, I can't tell you how many times, well, next year we'll fix that. Well, next year we'll fix it. Well, guess what?
Continuous improvement.
You already screwed up my kid this year, and you're not doing anything to address the way you screwed them up. So it's like you're forgetting these are children. They're not widgets. I told an administrator this, you're looking at this from a 30-year career perspective. My kid has 2 years left. There is that disconnect. So you're talking about the disconnect between central office and school. There is a big disconnect between what parents want for their
Yeah.
kids and what the schools need
Sure.
in order for the state to take over. So I greatly appreciate, and I mean, honestly, we would probably not be the way we are if somebody was to have said, yeah, you know what, that was
Right.
a mistake, and this is what, great, okay, I can get down off my soapbox and I can go back to doing what I was
Now,
doing.
what we get now on the school's defense, and I know this from, many times what a kid tells a parent is not true.
Right.
And so usually a parent, not usually, sometimes a parent, and it's not a black and white, I'm sorry, we screwed up. It is, my kid told me this happened, and that's not the way it happened.
Right. Well,
And-
we're usually getting
and
information from
Sometimes
teachers.
so.
what the school tells you is not what happened either.
Yeah, that is
Right.
very
It
true.
is. It is true, I'm not saying that that's always the case, but there's been plenty of times where I've also been told the kid said you said this, and I'm
The
like,
kid,
that is
kid on the
not-
bus. Oh, the bus
Yeah.
driver dropped me off
Yeah.
at the wrong place.
You know,
What?
so I mean,
We smell
Yeah,
the,
no,
we smell the
that's
fish
not
with
like-
that
there's
one.
error all over the place.
Right.
I mean, I'm not saying that one or the other, but many times for a principal, it's kind of sifting through that. But
Correct.
if it was that easy where it was like, you're right, I screwed up, it would be much easier. It's not all like that where I was just clear to say, yeah, that's an error. on my
Right,
part.
there needs to be an avenue for there to be more of an open dialogue, that as a parent, you could come and say, this is what my child told me, can you verify
That's
or
right.
not?
That's right.
Without
what's
people
going
getting
on.
defensive or
Right.
covering things up
But
before you've
because,
had a chance.
because we're so used to things are gonna be covered up and denied, you're automatically going in as a defensive, I mean, I almost got into a fist fight with one of your area superintendents a couple weeks ago with just, you're not being respectful to me, you're dealing, I was told that, and I'm like, you're dealing with my kid and you're screwing up his life, I'm sorry. Respect goes both ways, it's that bullying mentality,
Yeah.
with a lot of
Yeah.
administrators towards staff and towards parents. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've gotten to the point now where they're just like, dear Jesus, give her what her want, get her the hell out the door, because other parents will come with the same situation and they get treated completely differently. So there needs to be some kind of system put in
Mhm.
place with parents
But
working
there
together.
are also parents who, like my mom, working 2 jobs, social
Right,
worker
and
for
they
the state of
can't.
Kentucky, trying to
Right,
make sure we have food to eat.
Yeah.
right,
And there are parents who just can't do it.
Nope.
right.
They just can't.
So some system, is there some way to,
And their kids just get,
right, that's what I'm
Well,
saying, it's
I
not an
think-
easy issue to fix, but
No.
how?
And you
Well, I
probably
think-
lived that with you, that's why
Yeah.
you didn't have high turnout. One of the reasons you didn't have high
Yeah, I
turnout.
think parent service was much better under our old system, where there was a superintendent of high school, elementary, middle school, and their high school just had one liaison, elementary had multiple liaisons, that dealt solely with parents and parent issues and helping to solve parent issues.
Mhm.
Now, yes, some things went up to the assistant superintendent. If it was a major ordeal, something that happened that needed to be dealt with, but these people were there for parents, that's what the liaison was for.
Customer service.
And we got rid of that and went to these ETCs and and they're kind of assistants to the assistant superintendent. And so now all issues somehow are involved in the assistant superintendent, and that's just not good.
It's not working.
They
sweep
can't-
things
It's not
under the
working.
rug.
So what they
they-
should be doing are these schools we're talking about working, and if not, how do we fix it? And someone else should be dedicated to helping a parent with an issue, because it's tough to do both
Right, right.
in our school system today. So we've really got to look at how that is and have people that are dedicated to parent service and customer service.
And there needs to be a true, I don't want to call it whistleblower necessarily, but a true concern raising system. Right now.
The ombudsman is not a system that tends to work.
Right,
I don't
there's,
even
and
know
so there's
that
no
right now.
trust.
Like I'm meeting with her, but that's something that's a mysterious thing that as school people, we just don't know how. that
There's no
works.
trust that if you send some
That makes me feel
information in,
really comfortable.
Yeah.
if you send some
Principal's going
information
to
in, you
order
don't really know if it's gonna be used against you. Our rumors I've heard from people that have actually had issues that they've given to ombudsman, it ends up being more of a way for the superintendent to scramble and cover it up and make it go away instead of actually addressing the problem. And again, that's all leadership. You're gonna fix that. We're so grateful that there's a change.
I got, the quiet one's got some more questions.
Go ahead.
Okay, so you talked to the area superintendents today, or
No,
in the
last
last,
week.
okay, and asked them to look at their TEL surveys and give you schools. So then they need more resources.
It's probably too much information
So-
I gave you all, but that's
Well,
okay.
that's fine, but the resources, but I mean, is that more money, is that more training, is that more people in the office, is that a combination of all of it? You know, is it?
Well, anytime someone's struggling, I think oversight is number one. So if I have a teacher that's struggling, myself or someone else needs to be in there as much as possible, saying, I'm not so sure that, now, not making it miserable on them. It has to be a culture of support. But if a teacher is struggling and I leave them alone, not good, not good. And so, first of all, they have to have trust in me to say, I'm trying to get you to be better. I was a little cynical before I got to DOS about improving teachers like that are struggling. I've changed because our support is so high there that we saw some incredible improvements out of teachers. So I changed my mind about that. So without a doubt, number one has to be oversight. Like if we find out a school is struggling, we've got to be in that school often and knowing what the problems are. You can't address problems unless you know what the problems are. Now, sometimes it's support. Sometimes it's you've got all these broken windows, and it's just a euphemism, broken windows, but all right, you've got broken windows, so to speak. Let me help you get that fixed. Let me get you what you need. Taking away all the barriers so that that person can't say, I would be successful if I had this. So, when I work with a struggling teacher, first of all, I'm a big believer in critical conversations. So sitting face to face and saying, this is not going well because of these three things. And teachers will tell you I do that, and they're appreciative of it, that we're struggling here because of this. And so we've got to fix it. And here's how we're going to do it. But I also want to take off the table, tell me what you need. I don't want them to say at any time, I would be successful if I had this. Well, let me get you that. Let me get you someone to come in and work with you on classroom management who's going to observe you. You're going to observe them. They're going to give you feedback. You ask questions, non-evaluative, all of that stuff. But it's a balance between support and giving them what they need, but also being very straightforward and saying this isn't working, so this is what we need. Yeah, a lot of professional development, but that requires someone to be in the school.
Okay, do you normally, I guess, have a time frame for you? It's like, or I guess benchmarks or something, because again, our kids are only in there for a very short period of time. So it's like, how long is we're in there helping you? Do you have, just in general, I mean, it's
So
just,
reminder that, once someone passes it, May 15th, they're essentially on contract for the year. Meaning unless there is some ethical reason or something during the year, they're essentially good for the following year. So that's, number one, that essentially they have a contract. If they do something that violates, ethics, law, anything, then that's a different story. So that has to be taken into account. Now, It doesn't mean that in a most critical situation that someone's not removed and put somewhere else to work. Now, they're guaranteed that salary and, but that's what they're guaranteed. So I can't say that would happen. That would be in the absolute most needy situation where, and maybe it would happen. I can't say that would happen in any school at this point, but there might come a time where you say you're still gonna collect your 100 and whatever thousand it is and work, but you're gonna do it somewhere else, and I'm gonna put someone in there. But the trade-off with that is now we have another six-figure person at a central office job and then the reaction usually is, well, that person wasn't being successful, so they just moved him to central office. So there's a trade-off in all of this. There's no easy answer to, well, you just took someone and made it easy on them, moving them over there. Meanwhile, we need someone else there. So there is no easy answer to that. And I don't know what the specific timeline is like I said before, critical conversation, identify problems, set I need to see improvement. We need to see it in this amount of time. If not, then decisions are gonna have to be made.
And really quick too, the showcase of schools, is that done for this year? Because
We
that
have a
was
place.
rumored.
There's no location.
Yeah, there's some
Well, because
conflicting information that I have on that too. So like I said, I have not traveled down that road yet since I
The schools
started.
that have that reputation,
Yeah,
They need to overcome.
and you just go, oh, I'm not going to Shawnee
yeah,
because.
yeah.
But then if you only went to a virtual showcase type of thing,
Yeah.
then
bothered.
it hurts. That's it.
Yeah, I know they've done the virtual videos. I haven't met with communications, which would be under her, but meeting with her, I was supposed to meet today, but had to cancel. So by the end of the week, I should know a little bit more about that.
Well, we're coming up on 6:15.
Okay.
So I know we've monopolized a lot of your time today.
enjoyed
We
it.
certainly appreciate it. I would like to ask, what can a group like ours do to support you in your role in any kind of transition or
Changes that you're wanting to
messaging
make or.
Yes, because sometimes it can look self-serving,
Mhm.
especially meeting with legislators, for example. You look like you're protecting your job or
Yeah.
your teachers or what have you. We're parents, we're stakeholders who don't have an agenda other than better public schools,
Yeah.
quality public schools. So use us in that regard to help with relationships with other organizations who maybe can't see eye to eye, or with legislators, Tiffany and Karen and Aaron and a number of us were real active in
Yeah.
this last legislative session, so we have some good relationships with legislators. We've got two really scary things coming down the pike with charter schools and neighborhood schools
Mhm.
bill. Kevin Bratcher actually sent me a Facebook message. We cornered him at the community forum, and he actually listened to us for
I meet
over
with
an
them on
hour.
Thursday.
Oh, okay.
So we have some ideas, that's a separate meeting we could spend hours
Yeah.
on as well. We have some ideas, this is kind of a win-win, because everything really starts in the West End.
Yeah.
We see it at Shawnee, where kids on the first day of school actually show up at Shawnee. They think it's their school because it's closest to their home.
Well, or it was their school last year and they moved next door to their aunt's house.
Yeah, there's that, and we sent them home.
Yeah.
We didn't try to accommodate them. If that's the school that's convenient for them and that's where they want to be, why wouldn't we try to
Yeah.
accommodate them? They're told they have to apply for a transfer. Well, that means they have to have a 2.5 grade point average and no behavior and no
That's right.
attendance issues.
Access
So
to a computer and internet and somebody to do it for them.
kind of a hybrid version of that neighborhood schools bill is if someone actually wants to attend a school closest to their home, why wouldn't we let them?
Yeah.
Let's unwind some of that busing if it's what they want. And then, secondly, let's make the West End schools more attractive and create more carrot, less stick, and try to get the diversity because people want to be there. Help them understand the importance of diversity.
Yeah.
As an East End citizen, someone probably at some point had to open my eyes to the value of diversity, and now I get it. But I think there are a lot of people in the East End and South End and wherever who don't know the harm they're doing by staying in their bubble. And if they only knew that they could be part of the solution by just being informed and educated, you have 101,000 vehicles with which to send communication home. that could be part of the messaging that goes home with students in their backpacks and through the portal. And again, marketing is my thing, so I see so many missed opportunities.
Yeah.
Even though on-hold message is just a bunch of repeated
Yeah.
elevator music. There could be words
You're
on
right.
there.
Message from me, that's a great point.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't we do a message from me? But,
Absolutely.
you know, I think the biggest thing that we can work together on is obviously communication. I mean, I think we should work on every other month, maybe having a meeting like this where we sit down for a couple hours, you know, and you all can put new cards out or the same ones if you want. Definitely being advocates, I think, with other organizations and groups, and I think we have to communicate on that this is where we want to go. But, you know, we might need some help with either legislators or other groups.
And several of us here are members of other
Yep.
groups as well. Tyra's in several, Kentucky Alliance.
Kentucky Alliance, JCTA.
The Kentucky Alliance of, what is it?
Kentucky Alliance Against Racist and Political Oppression.
I'll meet with you tomorrow night too.
Yep, that's right.
Did you know that? All right.
I'm gonna send an email.
I will be there. So,
And we're both on NAACP and although
I
they
guess I'm
really-
going to have to come with a new speech tomorrow then, because you'll be like, I heard this last night.
Here, you want to take the cards we didn't use?
Yeah. But I think that's a big thing. And then I think what we really have to do is take a look at some of our schools and really come up with some innovative ways to do things differently in the coming years. And so I think you all being a big part of that. I think that's a huge part of it. I mean, understand and know that obviously at some point I'm going to have to make some decisions that you all might disagree with. I hope to be able to explain it and say, clearly this is why I had to do it. And you can walk out of the room saying we still disagree. And that's fine. But what I never want is for you all to say, it was last minute, we didn't have opportunity to give input, it was rushed, why, all of these things. You might disagree with it. So the Maupin thing, for instance, if I had started that in November and we went through a long process, and in the end you still might disagree with it, but I would never want it to be, we didn't have the opportunity to give input and feedback and it was rushed and it seemed to be misinformation and lies. And so I hope when we meet, if that does happen, that we can talk about that. And obviously I would apologize if I did, but I'd be very disappointed if that were the case too.
And I have your cell.
What's that?
I have your
You've
cell
got my cell phone. That's right.
That's dangerous.
I know it is, isn't it? Like when I called to talk to her on the phone, I said, maybe I need to drive back to school and call. I said, no, that's not the way I am. So,
Well, sometimes we can just shoot you a quick text message about something and
Sure.
clear something up really quickly. Mike Razor in central office has been really good about that.
Yeah.
Like, he's very open and frank
Yep.
and honest, and I think you've got a good ally in him
I agree.
in the central office as well. So hopefully we can continue that.
well, then why don't we plan on really being essentially June 1, that sometime before school starts. So, you know, maybe 3 or 4 weeks, late July, early August, August 1 or something like that, and you all can kind of coordinate. We can plan on having a second meeting then right before school. And then the following meeting, maybe the 1st of October, when we've had a couple months of school. You know, and see where we are at that point. So if we could coordinate then maybe right before the start of school to have a second meeting.
Absolutely,
I think that sounds
absolutely.
wonderful.
The thing that I think is most pressing is what we're doing about this neighborhood schools bill, unless you think you can just talk him into like
No,
letting it drop.
what I've said and what needs to happen with this, obviously, I don't have a whole, you know, the governor gave me his ringing endorsement the other day, which was he's a decent choice in the interim.
Of all our
You know, and everyone
superintendents,
called
you're
me
definitely
like,
the
Like,
most
he
recent.
has a clue.
yeah,
I mean,
everyone
come
called,
on.
that's crazy, and so, I still laugh about that. But what I said was, we have to be honest and say we have issues with
Yes.
student assignment that need to be addressed. Our city has changed immensely in 10 years.
Yes.
And so, you know, I mean, most of Smoketown's not even there anymore, you know, it's Nulu now in 10 years. I mean, what a impact that has made on the schools that, you know, that housing, the Iroquois housing project is no longer there. I mean, things have changed and we haven't responded to it. And so we have to be upfront and frank and say, we have issues, we're going to change it, here is our plan. Here is maybe the steps we will take to give the students the opportunity to go to their neighborhood school. give us the opportunity to fix it before doing that.
Do you think he'll listen?
I'll let you know after I meet with him.
Okay.
We had a
If
feeling
not-
he wanted the neighborhood schools was a port to break the school system in order to flush people into charter schools, like it was
Well-
a hand in
It's all part
hand.
of the same.
Let's not be, we need to know too that we have some East End schools that are pushing for this. That we don't want those kids in our school.
Right,
Exactly.
but that's that ignorance, that's that
I live in
not
one of those neighborhoods.
understanding.
So I mean, it's not like everyone from JCPS is anti, that neighborhood schools bill.
But every school board candidate who's ever run on a neighborhood schools platform has lost.
Yep.
So the voters still have said, we don't want neighborhood, yes, we want changes to our student assignment plan, it's broken and we need to fix it, but
I
we
mean,
don't need the
perfect-
state coming in and telling us
I
that's.
mean, a perfect example is that the kids who go to Shawnee Middle School, most of their resides is J-Town High School. Like, how silly is that the kids who go,
To DOS as well.
Doss, we get some, but like a good amount, if you look at the map and lay it over, the Shawnee, which I know it's not a huge number of resides, but why wouldn't we say their resides, if it's Shawnee Middle School, is also Shawnee High School?
Thank you.
Like, it's just so,
Ding, ding, ding.
if a kid is in Shawnee Middle School and they wanna go to Shawnee High School, they have to fill out some kind of
Yep.
transfer or magnet.
And all that work that they did in the middle school.
It's silly.
just
It's
go
just
somewhere
silliness.
else.
So I mean, those are things that have to be changed and reviewed.
Plus, it was supposed to be magnet only anyway, and then when
Yeah.
they disbanded Myers.
When they had to make a decision about,
Last minute,
Dr.
Yeah.
Jaggers has told me,
without feedback.
sorry, she's told me about that, so,
I spoke to a teacher that was at Myers when they disbanded.
Yeah.
yeah.
She said Myers it needed to go, it was that.
Yeah, but they didn't think
They
about
didn't do
where
it
they were
right.
going.
Oh, no, I know that.
Again, it was the
Yeah.
same,
They had
they made a
mixed
decision at
grade
the ninth hour.
So don't forget to remind me right around the 1st of August, I'm sure
Okay.
you will, but we will plan on something right around that time that works for you all.
That's great.
Okay?
Thank you very much.
Thank
Enjoyed
you
it, guys.
so very
Thank you
much.
very much.
And then